Happy Sunday, SMITE fans, and welcome back to another day of the SMITE Pro League here in Alpharetta, Georgia. My name is Jim Tucker. I got Mifflin joining me on the desk, but before we move on to our sets, I want to give a shout out to our good friends over at Prime Gaming for being the sponsor in Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. Make sure that you make the most out of your Prime membership, get your free shipping, music, movies, and more, including games whenever you link that over to your Twitch account, and get Prime Gaming new games every single month, right at the start of the month, and free content and all the games that you might have already been playing. So if there's something out there that's got your interest, take a peek over at the little crown at the top. You also get a free Twitch Prime sub to your favorite streamer. So thank you so much once again to Prime Gaming for being the sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. Again, I'm J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me. We got some decent sets up at least today. We're going to be starting with a pretty big one. The Atlantis Leviathans, the Jade Dragons to kick things off. Then we see the Kings, the Bolts, the Valkyries, the Scarabs, all those teams coming up just a little bit later on.
Yeah, a lot of close matchups today. I'm really excited for this first one, the Leviathans up against the Jade Dragons. I mean, both these teams coming off a loss. You got to think they're real hungry for some wins.
Yeah, especially a team like the Atlantis Leviathans. The last time that they squared off with the Dragons a few weeks back did end up being a 2-1 to the Jade Dragons. So this first matchup, a very important one for both of these teams, especially to try and bump themselves up a little bit in the standings. We'll have the Kings and the Scarabs after that, and then the Bolts and the Valkyries to round out our triple header Sunday. And talking about the standings and where these teams currently are sitting, well, we know the Camelot Kings are still at the top. Nobody's been able to really dethrone them just yet. They've taken a set loss, but outside of that, they haven't been able to falter against any of these teams just yet. With this Leviathans and Jade Dragons matchup, a very close one, a 5-5 record for the Leviathans and a 4-5 for the Dragons, and be a big win if the Dragons can find one here.
Yeah, should be able to leapfrog the Leviathans, find a little bit more contention, tie up against the Tartarus Titans in fourth. Would be great for the Jade Dragons, who have been, I suppose, developing a new style recently. I mean, you're experimenting, so I suppose you're willing to accept some growing pains, and I think that's where the Jade Dragons find themselves currently.
Well, and one team that's also doing at least a little bit of experimenting, mostly in the duo lane of anything else, is the Atlantis Leviathans. Zapman running these mages in the ADCs more often than not. But one player who hasn't really kind of strayed away from at least what's been the meta, what's kind of been the talk of the town and the top picks, has been Panitom over in the jungle. He's been playing a lot of what has just been working, whether it be the Erlang Shens, the Osirises, the Dodgies, whatever he can get his hands on, Panitom will run with.
Yeah, and you know what? When your entire team is making these shift ups, someone's got to be that constant pillar that you know you can play around consistently. And Panitom has generally been that for the Atlantis Leviathans. Early aggression from just the standard bread and butter jungle picks, the things like Erlang Shen, things like Osiris. Wouldn't be surprised if things like Gilgamesh start getting looked at as well. Panitom, always the progenitor of aggression for this team, always the one getting the ball rolling for them early on, but generally willing to give up a bit of his farm. Panitom is possibly one of the most selfless junglers I've seen play. He'll give up his own farm, he'll rotate into fights that aren't exactly looking very good, and he'll try and peel out for his team. And the Leviathans look pretty good for it, but when push comes to shove, big events, big matches, Panitom's got it in him to step up and be that hyper carry as well.
He definitely can. He's also one of the more active junglers when it comes to early game ganks. When you think of some of the junglers in the league, I also think of players like Lasber and Cuvofred who like to get very active early in one of these lanes. But Panitom's one of the few who's still making rotations even over towards the duo lane, which is usually the least beneficial one, especially if you don't end up getting one of those ganks. So seeing Panitom remaining to stay active, and maybe it just does come down to the picks that he's going with. Like we said, a lot of the auto attack style warriors, the ones who want to get in your face very early.
Yeah, I mean, the rotations towards duo, I think, may be an interesting topic. It's not so much that it's lacking in value. It's more so if you rotate over and you don't get your kill, oh, well, there's not a whole lot of farm on that side of the map. Or if you even do get the kill, used to be, all right, let's just go to the Gold Fury. Nowadays, Gold Fury wins 1v4s pre-10 minutes, so you probably don't have that opportunity too often either. But you are right to say that Panitom very willing to facilitate his duo lane, very willing to make that rotation, which is a bit of a stray from the standard. Feels like nowadays, most junglers just kind of hanging out in the solo lane.
Yeah, most junglers aren't really going over to that side of the map. And we've been talking a lot about Panitom. We'll go ahead and talk to Panitom. Standing by for our pregame interview is the jungler for the Leviathans. First off, thanks for coming in for the interview. Your matchup today, the last time that you guys faced off against the Dragons, they found a 2-1 win over you guys. Well, what's kind of the change-ups your team's been making to take them on today?
I feel like we're gonna be playing like better because we have been like, I don't know, like closer to the meta, and we realize a lot of stuff, so we should be better.
Yeah, we've been watching a lot of interesting stuff come from the Dragons recently. We saw fineokay and PandaCat make a lane swap in their last matchup. We've seen Pegon go over into the dual lane a couple of times. I mean, what's it like going up against a team where you just don't know where players are going to be going?
Yeah, exactly. That's really hard because it's like so hard to draft because you don't even know what they're gonna pick or what role are they gonna play. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing we always talk about, you know, the farm with you and Sheento, it seems that you've been able to find a little bit more farm in the jungle. And with this new kind of meta, do you think that with some of the new items that have come in, maybe some of the buffs around, do you think that's changed up the jungle dynamic a little bit?
No, I don't think so. I think like the meta is kind of the same, but more beneficial for the junglers, and that's it.
Okay, sounds like you got everything under control there, Panitom. Thanks for coming by for the pre-game interview. Good luck in your set.
Thank you.
So at least keeping at least to the standard for most of his team. But I think the answer that he gave against a team like the Dragons, something that we'll talk a lot about, talking about the Dragons, is you just don't know what these guys are going to play or where they're going to play them or who is going to play them in what lane. I mean, it was the Friday matchup that we saw. Man, it's already Sunday. I can't believe that. But I mean, the Friday matchup, we had fineokay running Ratatosker ADC in the duo lane with Mike. We had PandaCat running Ullr in the solo lane. We've seen Pegon take Amaterasu to the duo lane. This Dragons team, it is crazy what these guys are doing. Probably the only player who's not doing anything super wild is got to be Sanford over in the jungle.
Yeah, junglers aren't allowed to have that level of fun, man. We can't just role swap. You think people can just do what jungles do? No, it's a specialized role, and Sanford fits it very well. I mean, we talk about Sanford through the years, and the conversation has always been, yeah, this guy's like the dictionary picture of jungler. Just whatever is considered standard jungler stuff, he's going towards. If assassins aren't in the meta, he's probably still playing him because he's just one of those classical players that's been in the game, in the scene for a very, very long time. Having had the opportunity to speak with coaches of past, they've said that Sanford is a bit of a contrarian, won't exactly always play what everyone else is. If Osiris is in the meta, Sanford doesn't really want to play it. If he isn't, Sanford really wants to play it. So maybe one that we'll keep our eyes on. As you can tell, even just watching the clips, right? We go from watching Panitom's clips and it's Erlang, Shen, Osiris. And then maybe once in a while you'll see an assassin. Go to Sanford feels like every single one of his highlights is just a different god because he has got that incredibly broad god pool. Fits the style of the Jade Dragons in that if everybody's capable of playing everything, you don't know where anything is going or who's going where, which almost kind of makes this a camouflage for the team. But with all that experimentation, the Jade Dragons haven't really been stepping up to those highs that we've come to expect from them.
Yeah, they haven't really been netting a whole lot of big wins. A lot of very close matchups more than anything else against teams. They did take game number 1 up against the Bolts in their previous matchup, even with all of the crazy role swaps that they had done during that one. Game 2, not quite as well. Game 3, kind of the same in that regard there. Though, one of the big crutches of that one was the fact that Dodgy kept getting through for Lasbra, and we know how well that Lasbra plays on that god. So maybe, at least for the Jade Dragons, kind of figuring out what their weaknesses are when it comes to gods that they have to play up against could be a big benefit for them to try and take on the Leviathans. You know that Panitom is very capable of playing the dodgy. We know that Panitom is capable of getting in on these kinds of assassins and hard carries. So maybe, Mifflin, do you think for the Dragons, when it comes to their draft, it's less so we need to draft what works best for us, but maybe so take away what works best against them?
I'm not even certain that that's, like, even conversationally how it's going to work, right? Like, Lasbra's really good at dodgy. It's not so much that dodgy's really good against the Jade Dragons. So not certain that they're worried about any specific god pick in general outside of just, you know, the standard meta stuff, things like the Emoja that can really start to dominate some of these laning phases, rotate through, heal in those team fights. The Jade Dragons are a team that have always said about themselves, we're going to play our own style. We're going to play what we want to play, and that's all we're going to do. We're going to play aggressive, or if we have to, we'll lean towards the mid-game. If we feel like role-swapping day of, they're going to do that. If they feel like lane-swapping mid-match, they're going to do that as well. Anything that they can to find these wins. So the question being, should they worry about the Leviathans, or should they play their own game? I think the Jade Dragons should just do them.
It seems like that's kind of the answer for a lot of the teams out there. I mean, whenever we talked to them and said, you know, they can do what they want. We're just going to do our own thing. And maybe that is just the call of the Dragons go for up against the Leviathans. They found the 2-1 up against them last time. That was a few weeks ago when those teams played off at the first half of this phase. Now that we come into the second half of the round robin, things have been changing up. Obviously, we're in a whole new meta now with this mid-season patch, new items, god changes, map changes, all these kinds of things. And now we got to get a fresh look as we're coming to kind of the end of this first week as to how some of this is shaping up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the most part, it hasn't shifted the meta too much. God picks largely still the same, maybe like a pick here or there that's slightly different. I think Panitom actually answers the question very well. I think it is reflective not only of the jungle, but the entirety of SMITE. Some things just got better, like Heavy Executioner, of course, going to make anyone that was thinking about building Executioner, or even the other Executioner option, just makes that a better item. All these Jotun's glyphs just makes Jotun's a better option. So I think most things getting slight buffs, but not exactly different meta-wise.
Very true, and I think that's also reflected when we got to talk to the mid laners just this past week. We'll jump into picks and bans for game number 1 between the Leviathans and the Dragons. And when we talked to the mid laners prior, just this past Wednesday, they were kind of saying a lot of the same things about most of their picks. You know, gods like Uller, who are already building some of these items, he's just going to be better. AMC, just going to be better. So maybe it does kind of feel like it's less so that everything on the whole got better, or everything, you know, one god got more, one god got less. Everything just feels a little bit more impactful. Speaking of some of those impactful picks right away, Yemoja, as you highlighted earlier on, not something you ever want to give over to Ronngyu, and then Uller, which has notably been a first pick selection for the Leviathans more often than not in these last few weeks. That's going to be their first ban.
Yeah, so now the Jade Dragons have to think about their next ban coming up. I wonder if the Jade Dragons are concerned about Rongyu's Serket support. With the mask changes, I know Serket's like not exactly a support anymore, but maybe just could work with some of these start differences. That was the main thing I thought we would see come back, is the assassin supports, the warrior supports, the hyper-aggressive supports, just because of the mask changes, maybe some of these new items as well, but for the most part, has remained a bit stagnant. Well, you were right. Jade Dragons worried about the Daji. Take it off the table.
I mean, 2 games up against Lasbrud, kind of reminded them how good the god is. Maybe it's
took the whole set to figure it out, I guess.
I guess so, but hey, they're going to get rid of it this time around, so not going to deal with it, not going to let Panitom have that pick. Meanwhile, other bans, Osiris and Iset, and then Chernobog to round out the top 6 bans for the teams. A lot of stuff still open. Erlang Shen, something that Panitom has been playing very consistently over the last couple of sets that he has gotten his hands on it, still available to them. Khepri, if they want to go for maybe one of the support gods, or who knows, maybe Leviathans can throw a curveball at us right at the beginning. It'll be Artio. Not really a surprise for how strong this god has been. That one, a signature pick over for Jarcorrr in the solo.
Really good in combat healing, can hold her own in lane. After that first item, you kind of struggle until you've got a little bit of defense available to you. Otherwise, should just be fine. I am curious, though, and I've been hearing a lot about it, and I keep talking about it, too. The Fey Blessed Hoop Earrings. I just feel like that item might be incredibly strong on Artio, giving over 7.5% of your HP as a shield every time you apply that heal, as long as you're picking up the flowers on the map. Just incredibly strong itemization. Haven't seen too much of it so far, but certainly one that the pros have been talking about a fair bit. Could be an opportunity for the Leviathans to leverage that style of play. The Jade Dragons, on the other hand, probably will be looking towards that Khepri. I know Mike has gone towards it a fair bit in the past. Maybe not one that is his exact favorite to play, but really is strong, has decent matchup into the Artio. If you can abduct her before she's got the cripple field out or the stun field, could make it a lot easier for you to initiate these fights, have some damage sunk into her first. Jade Dragons really thinking about this pick, though. Outside of that, maybe you're concerned about your mid laner. Generally, Pegon likes to hold off to get the counter pick selection. We'll even take things like the Gilgamesh or even the Susano towards mid. Khepri locked in, Morrigan locked in as well. We got there. Took him a second, though.
It definitely did. Though, at least for Mike, in the last 6 games that he played, half of them were Khepri. The other half was spread between 3 different gods, Noxagev and Yemoja. So when he doesn't play the Khepri, it's a bit of a coin toss as to where he ends up going. But then the Morrigan over for mid, so Pegon not going to hold on to that counter pick selection, instead having the ability to just pick whatever everybody else does at this point. And then Erlang Shen for the Leviathans. So already a lot of control, a lot of CC available to Leviathans between the Artio and the Erlang Shen. Do you think that this is maybe going to open up an opportunity for the Leviathans to try and jump in on one of those assassin supports. Never mind, Shen locked in. That stops that question right there in its tracks. Now goes back over to the Jade Dragons. With this Khepri lock-in, do you get something for maybe Sam early on, now that you've kind of seen what the core 3 are for the front line?
Well, no, you don't.
No.
Cthulhu's probably going to be the lock-in if I had to guess. Jade Dragons got the core of their front line now. Double Cthulhu matchup in the late game team fight. Obviously an incredibly potent combo. I do like that the Leviathans have got a magical physical split in solo and jungle. Always the answer to Cthulhu, and this is something they had drafted before Cthulhu was locked in, is pressure. Having them be concerned about 2 sources, different sources of damage, very, very strong. Put some pressure towards that blue buff. Artio should be able to hold her own in lane and even bully this Cthulhu for the first 6 to 7 levels. Erlang Shen, of course, one of the highest pressure junglers in the game right now. I'm expecting to see the Leviathans put a whole lot of pressure over towards that soul lane. So with Xing Shen locked in as 3rd, that should alleviate some of the aggression we might see from the Jade Dragons on the opposite side of the map. Xing Shen can really utilize his HP bar as a resource thanks to all that additional HP 5 that he gets from his passive, meaning that he can really just spend his entire time in the laning phase, poking, prodding, trying to win that sustain war, and then eventually you're at least done enough damage that you could probably stop the Jade Dragons from invading, even if they do draft towards pressure. Jade Dragons, on the other hand, with their core 3, looks to me like this is a composition that is completely comprised of, hey, let's get to that team fight, let's group up, get the 5-on-5 engagement rolling, preferably in that Fire Giant pit, and that's where we're going to make our money.
And as far as the bans are concerned for the second wave, Heimdall and Hell banned away by the Jade Dragon, so taking away some extra sustain options, at least for Sheento with the Hell, and then something safe for Zapman removed off the board. Meanwhile, Scotty and Nemesis on the opposite side for Leviathan's band. No jungle picked up just yet, taking one more shot over there. And then Cupid gonna be locked in. So now Cupid did get a small little buff, I believe the clear to his heart bombs and some extra healing on his hearts, but is that really enough to bring Cupid back up into being a pick priority?
Well, I don't know that 7th overall pick is pick priority.
I mean, we're looking at what? A Chernobog, a Scotty, and a Heimdall is banned, so 4th option being Cupid?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm still a big fan of things like Jingwei or even the ROM, but Cupid is slightly better now, has okay matchup in Erlang Shen, has okay matchup in Artio. You could stop both of those dashes with the Fields of Love. Even Medusa, to a certain extent, will probably just trade out with her ultimate for ultimate just about every single time, but being able to stop that aggression, last rate in a Viper Shot combo, pretty hard to come by if there's a giant cripple field right in front of you. And the main strength of Medusa, I suppose, being that acid spray in lane. Sure, it applies the anti-heal now, but having that poke from a distance mitigated by all that healing from Cupid, going to be incredibly strong. Maybe you're only locking in Cupid, though, for that team fight presence. Fields of Love, force out some of these relics, almost dictates a heavenly sprint pickup from the Leviathans, which means that you're losing out on some resources to deal with this double Cthulhu. You're forcing some of those defensive routes a little bit earlier. If the fight goes long, you've already got some healing now built into your team composition. I don't love Cupid in the laning phase, but I really do like Cupid in that team fight phase, and seeing as that is the nature of the Jade Dragons composition, pretty hard to argue against. Ravana, to round out the draft, one that has really risen up in pick ban order, still makes it all the way to 10th pick, though. Has a good deal of early game presence, probably not as much as Erlang Shen, won't deal nearly as much damage, but can still get involved at similar portions of the match. That's just there to be your bridge into the late game. And then come late game, I would argue Robin's a little bit better. With the Bumba's Hammer changes, having a bit more power on it, more of a actual assassin item, Robin's going to be dealing a whole lot of damage to some of these priority targets. It's going to be hard to get in that backline, though. Huang and Medusa, both pretty safe.
Now, one thing that you mentioned earlier was having the kind of split magical physical when dealing with a god like Cthulhu, or really kind of going up against anybody in that solo lane. So with that potential early pressure that can come from Panitom, could put the Jade Dragons down a little bit early. But when it comes to the team fighting phase, do Leviathans have the tools for what it takes to deal with this Cthulhu? Not just one, but potentially 2, assuming that this Morrigan transformation goes that way.
You know, having seen the Erlang Shen build that Layers brought out yesterday, Heavy Executioner, Toxic Blade, Berserker Shield, Kin Size, I'm thinking that these auto-attack junglers all of a sudden are way, way better at dealing with Cthulhu. Just having that 35% protection shred off of just 2 auto-attacks at 1.65 auto-attacks a second, that's like, what, like a second and a half to get your full shred. So I think the Leviathans have got the tools, as long as they're even, or even ahead. From behind, Erlang Shen just can't close that gap. He gets all the way up to the Cthulhu, and he gets there and he says, oh, I've got 10% of my HP left. Unfortunate. I'll have to walk out of there. So the goal of the Leviathans is to make sure you don't fall behind in the early, and then I would like to see them be the proactive element in the team fight. If you can start off the engagement and deal some damage to Cthulhu before he descends into madness, or poke out the Morrigan before she's able to descend into madness, it really does hamper the strengths of this Jade Dragons composition. They have got safety nets, though. Having that Khepri will at least keep one of them alive. Generally, you'll probably be using it on the Morrigan rather than the actual Cthulhu yourself. But I really do think this Leviathan's composition can work and has the potential to pull ahead early.
Well, we'll see if the Leviathans can pull ahead early and maybe find themselves a win over the Jade Dragons, or will the Dragons be the one to seal away game number 1? We're going to jump right in with Dave and Trelly to find out.
This is a battle of two teams who are in serious need of a good set win to start off this Sunday and round out, hopefully, the rest of the phase. The Jade Dragons, a team that have been experimenting not only with god picks, but role swaps, things like that recently. And the Leviathans, who've had an up and down phase, go up against the Kings previously. And that set obviously didn't go the way that they would have hoped. So, Trelly, I think two teams in search of some momentum, the often used buzzword, here in our first match on Sunday.
Yeah, it looks like the Jade Dragons want to come off swinging off the back of what seems like fineokay starting, not the Genji's guard. He's going for damage there. I imagine maybe a Pythagorean's piece, Bancroft. There's a few different options you can go, but that's a Cthulhu without beads that's building essentially full damage. So Panitom should notice that pretty early on and maybe throw some presence over to that solo lane. The issue is if fineokay gets ahead, that means Pegon's going to be doing full damage Cthulhu as well. I imagine that's going to be an interesting team fight mechanic once the game goes on. It could work out really well, or Panitom could get active very early, and it could really be a hindrance.
Absolutely. And look, Pythag's piece receives some changes, so we'll keep our eye on the first item there for fineokay and see what he ends up going towards. Sanford Soccer piloting this Ravana in the jungle up against Panitom. So Panitom with mannequins early, and you mentioned just a second ago, Trelly, if Panitom chooses to get active early, which maybe you would hope he's able to do with the mannequins start. Up against Sanford Soccer, who you want to get active early on a Raven, right? You know what a Raven will bring you in. Panitom is getting active early. His Totem of Coup stood absolutely no chance. And first coup of the game to the Leviathans. But the jungle matchup, so exciting in this one. Two junglers that feel like, you know, the early to mid game, really where they can make an impact.
Yeah, I do think Sanford Soccer probably wants to wait a little bit longer, just because you're up against Huang in this mid lane. Sheento, once he takes over to level 3, is going to have essentially unlimited safety in that lane. You can just use that Celestial Flight and get to the tower line pretty effortlessly. Duo lane, however, could be some decent gank potential. I mean, Zapman's always going to be a good target if you can try and block that dash, which is fairly easy to do if you can just blink behind him. So I do expect Sam to try and find that presence, just not where Panitom is, because this is what's going to happen. You take a ton of damage. Sanford Soccer being extremely weak, and Pegon had to step in there to make sure no more damage came through. So trying to avoid the Erlang Shen while still getting active early has to be on Sam's mind, and it looks like his speed buff could be getting looked at here.
Yeah, I wonder if Pegon rotates over and tries to help with this. Panitom rooted in place. So Sam does a good initial burst of damage, but Pegon can't leave. There's a wave crashing into that mid tier 1 tower, and Pegon can't afford to fall behind. Sam does have the 1-level lead because of just Bat Camp farm while Panitom's been hanging out. But again, still expect the Erlang Shen to do a decent bit of damage. Panitom now over to the blue buff, and blue buff dropped by the Leviathan, so invade successful. Root won't be there for fineokay. Jarcorrr looks like we'll get out just fine anyway. And so Panitom, Trelly, doesn't hide anything. Walks into the dragon side of the jungle and steals away a blue.
Wow, I'm surprised. I thought Sam and fineokay were going to head towards the other blue, but decide just going for the Totem of Coup and backing off. They don't want to put that much presence towards that buff. I think just the amount of CC that Jarcorrr has and the fact that Panitom, with some safety of the shielding and the Mannequin Scepter, is still going to be doing a ton of damage. So unfortunately for fineokay, despite the fact that he's going a little bit extra damage, is not going to get that blue buff early on. He does have the teleport though, so if his mana starts to take a hit, he should be just fine. And besides that, you know, not too much going on elsewhere. Just the usual jungle rotation over to solo. You sort of do a damage check. The Leviathans get the better end of that trade, and and back to the drawing board. So Pegon does take over to level 5, which could mean some more aggression. Essentially, when you have the Morrigan, you got 2 junglers. You could always have Pegon just clear wave very quickly. He gets the Doom Orb online, and then just sprint over to a different lane, and he could be a Robin just as easily and try to make sure that's going through. So you have to watch out at all times. The ward game is going to have to be strong for the Leviathans.
Right, team fight phase, we expect multiple Cthulhus because that's just a composition as old as time itself, the Morrigan with the Cthulhu. But until we get there, other options for Pegon, Robin being a great one, of course. And we haven't talked much about this Khepri just yet, something the desk was really excited about. I mean, you know what you get with Khepri at this point, right? I mean, it's not a ridiculously complex kit, but the way that it forces the opposing team to play the game is where this becomes a very dynamic type of pick. And Mike always on point with those Scarab's Blessings. It's gonna be, it's gonna be difficult for the Leviathans to burn down 1 Cthulhu, 2 Cthulhus, potentially a 3rd Cthulhu in some of these fights. It's actually a pretty obnoxious composition to team fight against.
No, you're not wrong, and that's the thing. I think the Khepri pick, it does get a lot of respect, and it gets banned away a fair bit, but what we don't get to talk about too often is the Leviathans, dialing it back, dialing their aggression back just because of it. You don't get to see that at the end game stats. You don't get to see that in the res. Just the fact that, maybe Panitom says, hey, can we look for a gank here? And then just, no, Khepri's here. And then, and then the gank just
Mike's there.
Yeah, exactly. Mike's here. We just have to look elsewhere, that sort of thing. It goes unnoticed to just anyone watching, and because it's just what the pick does. You always have to have your CC on point. With the fact that Mike has beads, even with CC, it's not going to be enough to guarantee that res doesn't go down. And it does look like fineokay went for the Pythags piece, so that is going to help him out, just giving his team that aura effect in the team fights, as well as if Pegon transforms, will also get that benefit. I haven't seen any aggression put towards fineokay because of this, so it's working out thus far. You get an extra bit of sustain in lane.
Yep.
You're not going to have that Genji's guard proc, but what you do get is going to have some more damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, they'll have to build tanky at some point, but decent to, I guess you don't have to. We've seen crazier things from the Jade Dragons. I don't know if you want Khepri to be your solo tank, though, especially when you got potentially double Cthulhu on your squad. So slightly changed Pythag piece has been, but still a good value item for fineokay early on in his build here. A little bit of stacking going on in the mid lane there as well. Sheento picks up the Warlock staff. Pegon obviously is going to pick up the Doom Orb. I still don't know where we stand on Doom Orb technically being a stacking item or not, but I'll stick with yes for the time being. And all things standard outside of that. However, a bit of pressure towards PolarBearMike. You're going to have a Scarab's Blessing, rather, to work through here. Mike will use it, and it will get procced, but the body blocks are in, and so are the dueling dragons. Sheento sends him Mike's way, and Leviathans have found their first pick.
Such a difficult place to be in for Mike there. He had the beads, he had the ult, but he knows if he beads, it's the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. 9 turns Blessing comes in shortly after. There's just so much CC that he has to deal with, and he thought the best option would be just use the Scarab's Blessing. Maybe my team gets there in time. They don't. At least you get 3 ultimates down at that point. So Sheento gets credit for first blood. Now PandaCat could be in some trouble.
PandaCat does use the beads, Petrify for the last bit of damage, but not the complete bit of damage. Whoa! What happened to Rongyu's health bar? It drains the obelisk a bit, I suppose, but then Pegon jumps in for a gank, and now Pegon's overextended, so Zapman turns around to kill. Ronngyu ganked by Pegon, who transforms into the Robin. And then immediately Pegon dies off. A bit chaotic there on the back end of that fight.
Yeah, this is what I was expecting. You have to worry about 2 different junglers, because say for Soccer's in right lane, you're like, there's no gank coming through, and then Pegon's able to clear the wave and stealth over, find the kill. I think used the overhead kick a little bit selfishly, and then, was punished for it. And then Zapman's going to get credit for a kill, as well as Panitom getting 2 assists. So you're seeing the gold a little bit in favor of the Leviathans for that reason. Just because it's 2-1 doesn't mean they haven't been getting the better end of some of these trades. And fineokay and Jarcorrr are essentially net even, both taking over to level 9 at the same exact time, give or take. So far we're not seeing too much action on that right side, but the left side of the map, certainly some sparks flying, and you got to pay attention to the relics as well. Because PBM was able to hold on to his beats, he should be fine, but PandaCat did use those beats during the start of that fight, so more attention being put towards that duo lane. Could be some trouble for the Cupid later on.
Yeah, Panitom's got Blink, and 9 turns Blessing. So whenever the Erlang Shen ends up toward the left, something of course, that PandaCat's going to have to be mindful of. Though Ronngyu as well. I mean, there's going to be plenty of damage for Zapman if, just say, potentially a Whirlwind of Rage and Steel connects, like that. That could, you know, kill off PandaCat maybe, and PandaCat will receive 0 healing from his hearts. Because right on time, Trelly, 0 beads for the Cupid. And that's just a walk-in from Ronngyu, Blink gets used, and another kill to the Leviathans. I give Zapman pretty healthy lead there in that lane. 2 levels and a nice chunk of stacks on the Transcendence.
Yeah, this is a different style of play for Zapman. He's used to getting camped, used to being put very far behind. Now he's got the lead. He's going to be farming effectively. I'm curious to see what he is able to do with that lead. It's not like he's unused to it, but it's just not the style of play we're used to seeing from the Leviathans. We see them get early leads. More often than not, it's through mid lane, which Sheento is a level up respectively, so he does have a little bit of presence in that lane. But Ronngyu, just so much patience, and PandaCat as well, was holding the dash as much as he could. Knew the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel was coming, knew he didn't have the beads, but Rongyu's like, I got all day. I'll chase you all the way to the end of the tower because we've got enough damage. Zapman's ult comes through the Petrify. Even if it doesn't stun you, it's going to do a fair bit of damage and force you to try and dash away. So still so much presence going on in the duo lane. It looks, at the moment, like PandaCat might have a chance to get his purple buff. The SMITE blinks in for a Scorpion invade, and it's already done. So he will just have to back off.
Yeah, PandaCat's left alone over there. Should be able to farm up okay, but always potential to dash in, throw Petrify out, and see what you can get done. Meanwhile, fighting continues over in mid. Pegon was stealth, sent a stun out, but doesn't end up connecting on any Leviathans. Mike's got to be careful here. Already punished once for, I don't know if you call it an overextension when he's on his own side of the jungle, but caught out, I suppose, by the Leviathans. I don't think he'll fall prey to that. However, Pegon will take the Scarab's Blessing. Instead of using the beads, ult gets used by Mike and will keep his mid laner alive.
Yeah, that's one of those plays that in ranked you're definitely using your beads and the support's ulting you, but because, you know, the comms are clear, hey, if the ult comes through, I've got you with the Scarab's Blessing. Pegon's gonna have to be forced to use the ult here, turns into SMITE,
Man.
and decides to back off because there's no more further aggression. That was just a blink. I mean, it's just a root from Ronngyu. He already used the ult. There's so much presence being put towards the Morrigan, but that's always going to be worth it because of the cooldown on the transformation from Pegon. So it's going to be so long before he's able to get active. The Leviathans, I expect, want to get even more active while that cooldown is down, possibly looking over towards Pyromancer. You have a fair bit of DPS on Panitom as is, and Jarcorr's got a fair bit of cooldown. He can just rotate over at any time and try and help out. So they do have a small opening there if they choose to, but man, I looked at the net worth chart. Zapman is up about 600 gold, give or take, but also PandaCat got a chalice. He already has a fair bit of healing with the heart, so that's another 300 gold he's down essentially just for some sustain in lane.
He's pretty behind.
So it's gonna start to add up. We see a full Aussie finish for Zapman. PandaCat's on the tier 1 balance blade, and it's not gonna get any closer anytime soon. So it's just, I don't expect to see this Cupid stepping up past like the tower line anytime soon.
No, why would you, right? Now, can the Leviathans force the hand of the Jade Dragons? I mean, it'd be a very early Gold Fury, but that's a lot of damage from Zapman. Looking for the 1v1, gets the 1v1, but now SMITE with a Mystic Rush in. Should get the return kill, but all too attractive was the option to dash into PandaCat, and Zapman gets the 1v1, then hands over a kill to Sam.
Yeah, it's going to keep growing that lead, and Sam does get a kill back, which is pretty nice, but unfortunately for PandaCat, he's not getting any farm at the moment because he's dead, and this wave is just going to be getting pushed by the Trebuchet, so Leviathans are going to continue to try and climb that lead ahead, close to 2,000, but no real objectives looked at just yet. Yeah, about 1,800 give or take, so it's climbing, but not quite ticking over that 2,000 mark. Leviathans are showing some presence over at the Pyromancer. Finally, I was waiting for this. Looking at the rotations, Pegon's trying to defend blue buff, so he's not going to be anywhere near this. This will be the first objective of the game going to the Leviathans off the back of that early presence from the Erlang Shen.
Looks like fineokay was able to pick up blue, so Jade Dragons able to grab themselves blue buff. Yeah, and I was hoping I was expecting maybe the Leviathans to pull the Pyro a couple of minutes ago, once both Scarab's Blessing and Transformation were down from Mike and Pegon respectively, but able to get it nonetheless and build up that gold lead a bit further, about 2,000. You've mentioned a good chunk of it over in ADC. Zapman continuing to build that up. PandaCat did have some gold in the back pocket. Goes back, finishes up the Aussie, so now the Balance Blade is the on-map differential, but Zap then will be able to go back and extend that itemization lead whenever he is able to purchase some items. So, I wonder if this was going to be the call. You have a big advantage on the left side of the map. Zapman ahead of PandaCat. And you have Shred on the objective. No one from the Jade Dragons has eyes on the Gold Fury, and the Leviathans will get that one quietly. So neutral objectives, fights, all of it in favor of the Levi's here over the last couple of minutes. Pegon going to initiate onto Ronngyu as the Scarab's Blessing from Mike will save his mid laner's life. Sanford blinks in, and Rongyu's aggression punished by the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, it seemed like Ronngyu was just bullying Pegon there. He did opt into that Chronos Pendant build, but didn't quite have it built there, so maybe he was hoping he had a little bit more cooldown. And just forcing out the transformation would have been decent if you can get out with your life, but there's 2 Robins there, and Sanford was able to rotate back in and make sure that that one goes down. As Zapman getting so aggressive, forcing out the dash from PandaCat. That purple buff does not belong to you, and Zapman's going to take that one away. So level 15 at 14 minutes. This is Zapman with the lead. You don't get to see it every day, but when you do, it's just so oppressive. PandaCat consistently just has to dash out.
You said it was, what, 600 gold Zapman was in the lead a few minutes ago? He is like 1,300 gold ahead of PandaCat over the last couple of minutes.
300 gold chalice that I'm countering in because...
Yeah, which you should. I mean, sure you get some sustain, but as far as damaging itemization, a few hundred extra gold that PandaCat has not been able to spend on his items. So Zap is in a very, very strong spot, and so no surprise the Leviathans able to get the Gold Fury, get it relatively quietly. It's Cupid yet to hit its mark in our expectations, and 1,800 gold in hand for Zapman.
Oh no.
Whereas only 1,000 for PandaCat. Panitom gonna blink in towards PandaCat, and in all likelihood going to be able to spend up that 1,100 gold a bit quicker. Panda takes off his headset because it has been a brutal game up to this point. 0-3 on the Cupid.
Look at the little
The lane
statue.
is a bloodbath.
The little PandaCat statue just sitting
Poor
over
guy.
there. Whenever you get killed, it's so small you can't even see
I
it.
would not have seen that because it's like over in the shadow a little bit.
It's one of those things you don't want to see when you come back in the lane. You're just like, come on, man. So you just
Yeah,
wanna
but
kill it.
now that tower's down, it's brave to assume Panda's even going to be up by that. He's not going to have to see it because he's going to be so far back.
He might never be able to go up and see that beautiful artwork that that man made for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, this has been a tough game on the left side of the map. Sam has had great answers for the Jade Dragons. 2-0 on this Robin. But Zap, Ronngyu, Panitom, Sheento, they have just made waves over on left, and this Cupid remains 3 levels and a healthy chunk of gold behind, now approaching the 2K gold differential just in ADC.
Yeah, and if you are looking towards the high points here for the Jade Dragons, you know, Pegon's relatively even. He's a level down, but still, you can turn into anyone. So you could just transform into Sheento if you wanted to get some of that burst. fineokay is level 16 and has a fair bit of tank stats online, so the team fight is not completely lost. And given the fact that Zapman's rotating in, PandaCat should be able to get some free farm here while the Leviathans look to get this Pyromancer on respawn. You always got to pay attention where those ADCs are at the moment. Mike could be in some trouble, and he's from the cripple field.
Mike does have Scarab's Blessing, but does not have much of a chance, and Panitom notches another. A bit longer on the Pyromancer cooldown than the Leviathans were hoping for. He got so much damage. No. Oh, no. PandaCat, he left the dual lane, and he's still going to get tower dove, but he survives this time. Pegon thrown back to the rest of the Leviathans. Sanford opens up the killing for the Jade Dragons. We might get our first look at what fineokay on this Cthulhu could do, and out of nowhere, the Jade Dragons were able to turn around a fight in mid. They have found 2 and only lost their support. And it looks like the numbers advantage will remain with the Jade Dragons.
And PandaCat was able to survive, so that's going to be pretty solid for them as well. Zap and Jarcorrr are still here, and Sheento is in the back as well. But Zap's going to dash it on this red buff. He does not care about that tower, trying to steal away that buff, and he will not get credit. Panda's taking this fight!
Yeah, we're taking a 1v1 for some reason because the rest of the Jade Dragons could have initiated on Zapman if Zap stuck around for 1 or 2 more auto attacks. No world where Panda ever wins that alone. But the rest of the Jade Dragons could have shut down Zap, and that would have been a big turnaround and a big help for PandaCat. But all things considered, Charlie, the timing of that pyro was a bit awkward for the Leviathans. They get a pick, but the objective wasn't there, and then fineokay rotates over and makes a big impact. Jade Dragons able to win a decent-looking fight and maybe able to grab the Pyromancer for themselves. Jarcorrr is close by. The rest of the Leviathans will rotate through as well, but the Pyro has been dropped. Panitom scurries forward, and Pegon without transformation doesn't have much of a chance.
Yeah, unfortunate for Pegon. I was going to say that Mike still has all of his relics, so that was a solid win for them, but wasn't close enough to get any sort of Scarab's Blessing. And now looks like the Pyromancer will be started up by the Leviathans, and with no one even close, fineokay teleporting in, but he's not going to make it in time, just going over to blue buff. Unless Sanford just sends it over the wall. I was going to say, he did walk up. He almost had time for the Mystic Rush, but thought better of it. We see a massive spike for a second, and then back about 5,000 gold in favor.
It'll be the Morrigan transformation.
Yeah, we'll be able to see it later on. Pegon sitting on no relics for quite some time, a minute before he's able to use Aegis, and the Primal Fury's got to be the next contention point, right?
Should be.
The Leviathans have had so much presence. They know when these objectives are up, and their grouping has been so solid as well. Usually, sending Zap over, just having the man advantage is always going to help you out. PandaCat rotated over as well, and hasn't been too far behind in farm given the situation, but 3 levels, I mean, that is not a great position to be in. He was sort of forced into building that chin size a little bit early. You would love to get an Executioner first, but you just got to hit your power spikes when you can, and he just needed to shred through some of the HP of the tanks and the Leviathan, so that he was sort of just forced into this build.
Feels like maybe I'm totally off base here, but it feels like a low player damage game. It feels like we're right around the 20-minute mark. Usually you got someone around 10K. I mean, I guess Jarcorrr is getting there, but especially in a game where you got 12 kills, I don't know. Maybe my brain could totally be messing with me, but
no, I agree.
I'm standing by it. Sheento has to flutter away, uses both of his actives. His fineokay is transformed in mid. And Sheento, relentlessly being tower dove, will end up dying. Sanford has the Scarab's Blessing. It gets procced. He'll get out and survive. The difference a Khepri makes. It's a 1-for-none trade for the Jade Dragons. And the Leviathans just have to accept it. Then another well-executed dive in the mid lane.
Yeah, I was wondering to see if Zapman was going to dash in there. He still has the Petrify if he wants to get active. It's sort of hiding around the wall here. And it looks like he will be able to get a massive ult from behind.
Yeah, Petrify, that one's big, but no damage outside of just Zapman. You need your AoE, but Sheento is dead. And PandaCat finally, after 20 minutes, able to get his first kill in the game. What is happening? It's a massive lead for the Atlantis Leviathans, but the Jade Dragons continuously finding kills. That is a 3-kill swing for the Jade Dragons, but it's not immediately over to the Primal Fury. It's back and reset first.
Yeah, I think resetting is probably the play here. You're still down a fair bit of gold, even up 5-3. You might as well spend that gold before you try to make any call. Look where PandaCat is. They're not heading over to Primal Fury, Dave. They're heading right for that Fire Giant. Ronngyu is already here. He's going to get some vision down and be ready to try and siege a defense. Sheento's on the way as well. Dueling Dragons, that cooldown is going to be coming up shortly as the Jade Dragons are getting ready to pull this.
Jade Dragons will have 10 seconds on the death timers for both Jarc and Panitom.
Body blocks.
Zapman going to be the target here for the Jade Dragons. Plenty of lockdown from fineokay. There's your stun from Pegon. The knockup won't connect because Zapman had beads. Just one more bit of range damage would have gotten the kill, but it's not there. But in the meantime, the Leviathans have been able to respawn their solo and jungle. Jarc and Panitom both back on the map. Looks like the Jade Dragons opted for the fight, came up empty-handed.
Yeah, it was close, but not enough damage, and they will just have to reset here. As the Leviathans, they don't see any opportunity to pull the Fire Giant either, so they're just going to go back to farming. Looks like Zapman is heading left, so possibly, as we theorized before that fight, the Primal Fury still will be that next contention point that everyone's going to be looking at. And Zap did immediately upgrade into that Furious Executioner, so a ton of penetration coming out from the Leviathan. That's going to help out the DPS of Panitom as well. So whenever you see Zap and Panitom fighting together, expect to see a fair bit of damage coming through because he said, I could have upgraded my starter item, but I'm gonna help out the rest of the squad here.
Yep.
And the physical damage should be flying. We saw fineokay go up into the ult there to send into madness, and he almost got shredded down. So it's gonna be that's gonna start to add up the damage as it goes through. As we got 3 Leviathans here in the mid lane trying to defend a tier 1 tower. And it looks like the Jade Dragons are trying to fight this as well. They're not happy about that Primal Fury going down.
Jade Dragons fighting without Zapman over here, so a small advantage for the time being. As luckily for PandaCat, the levels will start to catch up here. He was 3-4 levels behind at times, but Zap is at level 20. Can only hit level 20 once. Now PandaCat is on his way in the XP department. Still has some ground to make up over in gold. But man, look, even though the gold lead is still heavily for the Leviathans here. The intangibles, the momentum, the shot calling of the last couple of minutes feels like it's been there for the Jade Dragons despite being so heavily down in gold. Outside of that Primal Fury as a good way for the Leviathans to wrangle some control back here in this match. But I think even if the Jade Dragons lose this game, while you're not thrilled at how it's happened, the fact that you found your openings really around this Cthulhu and the fights in mid and the picks in mid, maybe something to take away. Ronngyu, you're going to be bullied out just a bit. Considering... No, it was clearing the ward. I thought the auto attacks were about to connect on the Fire Giant, but maybe just trying to bait in the Leviathans.
Yeah, the Jade Dragons from behind are going to pull the Pyroman, so the Leviathans aren't too pressed about this, and it looks like they will just let that one go for free. The Fire Giant is really what they are looking at here. You know, looking at, as you mentioned, the XP is going to start to come in favor for the Jade Dragons in the sense of, you know, they are able to catch up. They have some time here. They can just sit back and hopefully get PandaCat to level 20. Sanford extremely close as well. fineokay and Sanford both sitting at 3-0 respectively, so they have a fair bit of damage on their own side. It's really just their ADC that they're lacking in, and they need to, you know, wait a little bit to try and get that one. I mean, I'm interested to see what Pegon does with the Magi's. He could go for that Magi's Revenge and get some extra movement speed if he's really trying to zoom around, but I have to imagine he wants that Pendulum first or the alternate timeline. The upgraded starter has to be a bigger power spike on the table than just upgrading the Magi's Blessing. Mike is just defending this tower while Panitom's wrapping around. Could be in some trouble.
Mike gets pinned in place, has Scarab's Blessing and Bead, so he won't get tossed back by the Whirlwind of Raging Steel. But watch out, fineokay's in the back line. And guess who's back there? Sheento and Zapman. Triple knockup from fineokay as the Cthulhu terrorizing this team fighting PandaCat. Guy who started this game at 0-3 suddenly has a triple kill and in one fell swoop. This game looks entirely different for PandaCat, entirely different for the Jade Dragons, and the Cupid has come alive when the Jade Dragons needed it.
I mean, fineokay just goes absolutely massive in that fight. The knockups coming through. Pegon is also the Cthulhu. I don't know if they have enough time to keep this one going. They're going to be able to at least get that Phoenix.
Yeah, I'll get mid-tier 2. Phoenix as well. Rongnew's 15 seconds away. How much damage do you think you have? Mike's the next question. Mike is walking forward. Is he zoning, or are they trying to end this game before there's another chance? The Jade Dragons have at times been 5,000-6,000 gold down in this game, but now the respawns are coming through. Jarcorrr has found the first kill, and Ronngyu is back from base. Down to half HP as the Titan. PandaCat sent back, and PandaCat's got to dash away. The Jade Dragons no longer looking for the end, but maybe for the fight instead. Jarcorrr is stuck around. PandaCat's on a rampage, and the Titan will live. But the Jade Dragons now have full control of this matchup. But Panitom considering a continued fight.
And it looks like Jarc was able to teleport in. A kill here could be massive for the Leviathans. A good route is coming through, and it looks like Panitom doesn't have anything else to chase.
Oh no, but it was Jarcorrr who ended up getting rooted by fineokay. Won't have the legs to get in range. Is the call now head to fire? Both teams don't have their supports.
fineokay has teleport.
fineokay does have teleport. Jarc does not, but Jarc is here. And it is a Fire Giant pull by the Atlantis Leviathans. The back and forth of this game, unbelievable, but Fire Giant now gets dropped, and we will fight once again as fineokay goes into his ultimate, walks in towards the back line of the Leviathans, and this Cthulhu is relentless, but you deal with it with damage, and Zapman's got that in spades. fineokay falls. Jarcorrr likely will as well. Both solo laners going big in these fights, but both solo laners dying off.
And it looks like Sanford has the Mystic Rush in and is trying to chase this one down. Sheento holds on to the Celestial Flight, and Mike is going to dash in as well, but they don't have much for this.
Oh, the double root from PBM, and then the pin on the back end from Panitom sets up a double kill from PandaCat, who's got 7 kills in a row since his last death. And the Titan is still back at half HP, but all of the Jade Dragons are as well, and it looks like finally we'll get a breather, and Fire Giant is the call.
0-3 to 7-3 in what, 13 minutes or so? What a miraculous turnaround for not only the Jade Dragons, because they were a fair bit down as well, but PandaCat specifically. You got to give credit to the tanks of the Jade Dragons. Mike's been having a phenomenal performance, and fineokay on this Cthulhu has been soaking up so much damage, letting his ADC essentially free cast. I mean, he hasn't died in 7 kills for a reason. He's just been soaking up so much damage like a sponge, and Fire Giant will go down. Unfortunately, fineokay doesn't get it and won't have that buff, but the rest of the team, the Jade Dragons, already have the Titan at half HP, the mid-bird's already down, and they get to group finally and push down left side with that trebuchet.
My goodness, look at the damage charts. PandaCat at 20, nearly 22,000 damage. fineokay right in there behind as well, followed up by Pegon. That core of 3. Of course, Sanfrecoccer at 3-0-10, and Mike has been on points with the Scarab's Blessings. If you would have told me at 20 minutes that at 28 minutes, PandaCat would have gotten 7 kills in a row and be on top of the damage charts by 4,000 more than what Zapman is doing, I would have called you a liar, Trillian. I don't think you lie very often, and or ever maybe. Hopefully not too often. The Jade Dragons able to turn this game around, get themselves a real good look at a Game 1 win. And look, that Titan is so low. You know, one opening, this game is seriously in threat for the Leviathans.
Could be some trouble here, and that's why the Leviathans are trying to fight out of their base. They're not letting anyone get too close. They put up a little bit of a defense there at that tier 2 tower as Sanfrecoccer is pushing up mid as well, trying to split the forces of the Leviathans. They don't want a 5v5 fight. They want to try and make this a 4v4 at best. It's fineokay might be the one to charge in, but they're going to let the trebuchet do what it does first. Peter out, send a little bit more damage that way before they decide to siege this.
Need Panitom, need Sheento to connect damage onto one of the 2 Cthulhus. Gotta get there from Zapman as well, who's got the kin size. Haven't been able to keep him safe. fineokay has walked into the backline. Jarcorrr walks up to the Jade Dragons, but immediately loses half of the health bar. Root from Mike could have been devastating. Petrify flies in, doesn't do much. Defensive utility now missing. Offensive utility even missing from Zapman.
Yeah, and that Phoenix is getting very low. It's about 1 HP, but the trebuchet is already gone. So someone is going to have to step in here and tank this shot if they do want a shot at it. And Ronngyu is standing there as well. He's not going to let this one go through. We still have Panitom in mid trying to defend some fire wave, so it's a 5v4 for a couple seconds.
Sheento gets rooted, and Sanfrecoccer wants to take advantage. Aegis off of the Huang. Fields of Love goes down. That separates where the Leviathans can engage. fineokay being burnt down in the backline. This is where Zapman and his attack speed, his health shred, can come in handy. Left side Phoenix does fall. Mid lane Phoenix is back up. Some sustain for the Jade Dragons, but the double Cthulhus used and timeout, so it won't be a game end, but it will be a Phoenix taken.
Yeah, the left side Phoenix goes down. That mid bird is still about 1 HP just because it respawned, and notably the Titan did get a little bit of HP during that. There was a small opportunity where there was 3 Phoenixes up and the Titan was able to heal, so it's no longer a stiff breeze from getting knocked down. At least the Leviathans don't have to worry about that. The Jade Dragons are on full retreat though. They lose that buff in about 43 seconds, so they will grab the Pyromancer and then head back to base to spend some of that gold. Sanfrecoccer would love, to upgrade into that Heartseeker. I think that would help out his damage a ton, and he does get that. You got some upgraded relics here that would also go a long way for the Jade Dragons. But the Leviathans, all things considered, probably pretty happy with that defense. Zapman hits the big ult, doesn't do too much, but it was enough to scare off the Jade Dragons for a bit. You lose that Phoenix, but your mid Phoenix respawns, and now you're going to have to go, who's going to be defending that fire wave? Because you don't want EFG to go away for free. The best option, of course, would be to send Jarcorrr over. Hopefully he can clear quick enough and then teleport in, but if the Jade Dragons catch on to that, they should be able to take a fight. And it actually looks like Sanfrecoccer is going to push this wave up himself before the EFG spawns in, so someone's going to have to go over sooner rather than later.
What? If you're the Leviathans, you're thinking that this game is on easy street and you're looking at a Game 1 win just 10 minutes ago. Now suddenly you're having to consider all of those things as far as defense goes, and do we step up to the enhanced Fire Giant? I mean, Zapman's strong, builds effectively equalized. Pegon's still in a pretty strong spot.
He got Magi's Revenge. We love that.
Did get Magi's Revenge. Might make a difference.
Yeah, if someone pops that bubble, he gets to move a little bit faster, the rest of the team as well,
Yep.
so you got to be watching out. I assume it's going to be Ronngyu unless Panitom wants to blink in and you know, find an early pin because you're not ulting. You're not
Yeah,
using 9
movement
turns
speed.
blessing for a bubble. That's going to be the worst option.
That's pretty decent. I mean, 20% additional movement speed.
On top
I guess
of
to anyone who's within 40 units, on top of the additional benefits, of course. Not too bad. So suddenly an entire team speeding at you could be what the Leviathans have to think about. He will get pulled in, but he'll double leap away. He can't reset, doesn't have teleport. You're gonna have to fight this health at half HP. So a nice small win for the Jade Dragons. Fire Giant started. PandaCat can just do this while Mike is tanking it up. The Leviathans have to say something about this. The Fire Giant is burning. Your time is now, and Ronngyu will go in, but immediately has to leave. Jarcorrr attempting to do the same, but won't get in range, and hands Fire Giant to the Jade Dragons. And Petrify from Zapman doesn't end up getting much. fineokay transforms, walks in towards the right side of the map as the Leviathans backpedaling to their tier 2 tower, and it's a split up engagement, but the health bar is draining on the Atlantis Leviathans, and the Dragons have bought their time. Zapman, the guy who was ahead all game long, might be the first to go down in the final fight.
Yeah, Sanfrecoccer is able to find him while Pegon descends into madness on the right side. Phoenix, left side bird is spawning shortly, but the Leviathans have to back up here. They have to give this up. Defending the Titan could be possible. Defending that Phoenix is no way in shape.
Mid lane Phoenix hobbled. Left side Phoenix about to respawn. Simple shot calls here for the Jade Dragons. Just take down the birds, and so even if a Titan siege doesn't go your way, at least the map state has. One more Phoenix to go, so we think. Instead, fineokay into the Titan. Double stun on the backline from Jarcorrr. And the Jade Dragons, who were once down 7,000+ gold, turn game 1 around and win game 1. PandaCat was 0-3 through the laning phase. Took his headset off. Face in hands. And ends this game unstoppable on a 7-kill streak at 7-3. Unbelievable resilience from the Dragons.
I mean, we were making jokes about the Medusa statue of PandaCat just because he has to walk by. We didn't even know if he'd be able to get to the statue. That's how far out of lane he would have to travel to see it. What a miraculous turnaround. And again, PandaCat played phenomenal. He was able to turn around, but I have to give credit to that massive Cthulhu ult that just was the turning point of this game, where fineokay hits a massive 4-person knockup. Pegon comes through. He's hitting those knockups as well. And then PandaCat gets credit for all those kills, multiple triple kills throughout that game, and was able to turn that one around for the entirety of the Jade Dragons.
And look, now the worrying trend for the Leviathans is think about the King set. They were ahead in both of the games against the Camelot Kings, unable to close out those games. They were very ahead of the Jade Dragons here, unable to find the win in game number 1. This has the makings of an exciting set. We'll see what game 2 has in store coming up next.
Hey, wait, what did it win?
You win the respect.
You're telling me an alien wore this?
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that was a good cut.
Messaging him to mute.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course, and I can probably watch a stream on the side.
Content's gonna look good.
Pretty good, pretty good.
like sand. Pink clouds eating their way into my head. On and on until I'm bled. Superstitious, kind of vicious. Oh, knock, knock on wood. I was getting lost. And before I understood, I was deep, deep down on the bottom of a well. Seagrass was all I found. An alternative hell. No more cookies in this jar. Did I take it too far? Now I dwell in the sand like a fish on land. But I'm deep, deep down on the bottom of a well. I dug the lump, can't you tell? This place must be hell. No more cookies in this jar. Did I take it too far? Now I dwell in the sand like a fish on land. Like a fish on land, like a fish on land. Like a fish on land.
Hello and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League. And Mifflin, in that game, there's something I noticed. These double Cthulhu compositions that we run, it's always so hard to do it. One, because I'm a support player, so I don't get to ever run those. But also, I never really wonder if my machine can even handle something like that.
God.
It's a good thing that our pros are playing on the Alienware machines out there and the monitors to make sure that they can keep the best of gameplay out there available to themselves. And you too can also get your hands on some of that Alienware gear. If you go over to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code AWSMITE09, you too can pick up the Aurora Ryzen 10s that our pros are playing on at home, at the studio. You can check out the laptops that we're using or those same PCs, at least over for our production team as well. Thanks so much to Alienware coming back for Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. J-Mac and Mifflin here to help me break down game number 1. And it kind of just went a little, as you said, once you get to this team fight stage, so long as the Dragons aren't too far behind, pretty good team fight for them. This Cupid, while struggling early for sure. I mean, PandaCat 0-3 going into the team fight in mid, and then,
Twice,
what was it, like 20, 22 minutes, team fight in mid? All of a sudden, now PandaCat by the end of the game is like 7-3.
Yeah, a good mid-game for the Jade Dragons is what gets them to that point where they get to that critical mass where Double Cthulhu can just start dominating the map. It's that fight in mid that you're talking about that I think really does start that upward trend for the Jade Dragons. Sure, they weren't able to kill Sheento. They weren't quite able to kill Zapman, but they were able to force all of Sheento's relics, put the Leviathans on the back foot, group up on the Fire Giant for the first time. Don't take it. Don't even get Zapman's life there, but you're at least staggering those relics. And then finally, in the fight after that, 5-on-5 grouping, everybody's ready, all the ultimates are up, Double Cthulhu starts rolling in a team fight, relics were already burnt, and the Jade Dragons able to transition themselves very, very well into a win condition state. I think the Leviathans had done just about as much as you could hope for. I mean, Zapman finding a couple solo kills, Panitom involved early on, you've got the pressure early, but where the Leviathans stumble were those mid-game team fights and were transitioning themselves towards the objective. Seems like they were concerned about that 5-on-5 engagement, tried their best to put it off as long as possible, but when you wait that long to put your own strengths on the board, when you wait that long to leverage your own lead, it allows the Jade Dragons to get to a point where they can start fighting in on their own terms. And when a team's got double Cthulhu and they get to choose when the fights happen, you're probably going to be winning out on those.
4-1-8 for fineokay, a 4-0 game for Sam, and then PandaCat as well with his 7-3 to round things out. Jade Dragons able to come back at the end of it, and PandaCat with quite a lot of damage to his name. And once those team fights came through and he's able to get those consistent fields of loves out there, that bolsters up a lot of damage for his team. Some decent healing all around the board for these players too. I mean, between the times that Pegon went up and got some healing of his own, fineokay, PandaCat, lots of healing to deal with. Though not anything crazy we needed kind of the weird anti-heal there. So Jade Dragons find themselves a nice win in game number 1. Now, can they carry that momentum in towards game number 2? For the Leviathans, though, Mifflin, what are some change-ups that they need to make kind of to maybe help bridge themselves from the mid to the late game?
Well, I think it comes down to play on field in that regard. You want them getting in towards the objectives in a timely manner, establishing a lead that's a bit greater than what we had seen. I believe it was about nearly 5,000 favoring the Leviathans at one portion of that game. Yeah, when you got that lead, maybe go to the Gold Furies. Now all of a sudden you're at like 6,500. You go to the Pyromancers. All of a sudden you're at 8,500. Go to the Fire Giant, and all of a sudden you're knocking on the door of the Titan. I don't think that the Leviathans need to concern themselves about the composition. I feel like their draft did what it was supposed to, and they got leads where they were supposed to. It just comes down to play on field.
Okay, so maybe not too many changes in that regard at the very least. So we'll see if the Leviathans will keep up that same strategy at least as we jump into picks and bans for game number 2 up against the Jade Dragons. Or we'll see if maybe they decide to shake things up a little bit for themselves. We'll see if the Dragons decide to shake anything up as well. And one thing that was actually really cool to see, you know, something we don't get to see too often, are the actual petrify kills from Medusa that leave the big statues. Seeing the giant Cthulhu statue in the middle of the jungle, I was wondering how long he was going to sit up. They broke it almost immediately after, but definitely one of the cooler interactions you get to see in SMITE. But one of the shifts that we are seeing from the Leviathans, the Morrigan, going to be banned away alongside the Uller, and then the Umoja and Dodgy on the opposite side for the Dragons.
Leviathans have already taken out the Arkstone of the Jade Dragons' previous draft. Cthulhu on its own, still okay, but not exactly that strong. Generally, if Cthulhu's getting locked in, it is flanked by the Morrigan, so the Leviathans, in taking that away, will probably enforce a completely different composition from the Jade Dragons. And then the E-set ban right afterward, just making sure that, hey, if you're going to shift up in mid, let's make sure you're not just running down objectives early.
Especially with some of the changes to the masks. Now we've been seeing a little bit of those mage and assassin style supports could potentially be rising up, so maybe the Leviathans have a little worry about that potential too for PPM to maybe play that god. Osiris, the final ban for the Jade Dragons, and that leaves open Chernobog for the first time in what feels like forever. And, well, when you look down at the stats, you probably see why Chernobog's not getting through too often, Mifflin. 75% win rate over the course of 28 games.
It's just that global presence, man. Just makes him so versatile in these late game fights. You don't necessarily need him at the Fire Giant, but if you do, he'll get there at a moment's notice. Otherwise, he's taken down tier 1s, tier 2s, potentially even Phoenixes as well. Has got great stims into the late game. Utilizes itemization very well. Doesn't even necessarily have a poor laning phase. Not the highest kill potential in lane, but still certainly can hold his own, and is very safe with the ability to dash onto those walls or remove yourself from the playfield with the ultimate. So Chernobog, first overall for the Leviathans. No arguments here, just a very strong pick. But they do leave up, the Leviathans that is, a couple of priority picks for the Jade Dragons. We've seen a whole lot of Mike on this Khepri. Nemesis one that has been very strong, very versatile. The ability to kind of shred through that front line. Anytime you've got a Khepri and Nemesis together, I think it makes your composition so good at just killing the front line. Abduct whoever Jarcorrr is playing. Abduct whoever Rongyu's playing. Have that Nemesis ultimate ready. Maybe a heavy executioner as well. All of a sudden the prot shreds upwards of like 60 to 70% if you've got that fully stacked up. I like the draft top 2 from the Jade Dragons, but I would like to see a bit of pressure. Khepri not the best at establishing pressure in the lane itself. Nemesis, sure, can farm up pretty consistently early, but not a high-pressure jungler. You need to have a lane that you can play through. Pegon, no stranger to playing high-pressure mids. Maybe that's where you look for the Jade Dragons.
Maybe so, but over on the opposite side, for the Atlantis Leviathans, Soul going to be locked in, which now opens up the question. I believe in the past we have seen Sheento play this Chernobog in the mid role, so I'm wondering if Zapman is going to be the one to take this Soul, or if they'll give the Chernobog over to the Z-Man and allow Soul to run for Sheento in the mid lane. Couple that alongside Artio. No surprise seeing that one go back over to Jarcorrr. Do you have a preference between those two ones? Which one you'd rather see go into the mid lane for Sheento?
I think I would prefer to see Soul towards mid. We've seen the new Magical Hunter build once or twice so far with the Nimble Bancrofts. So if you're going like standard ability early on, you could still get a little bit of that attack speed towards that mid game. Means that having Soul in mid will just be a standard mage that can keep up with that clear, decent scaling, has the ability to rotate to both side lanes pretty quickly with the help of Disapparate. Generally very safe as well, CC immunity multiple ways. And I'm just a fan of having Chernobog in the duo lane. Just having that ability to rotate all the way across the map at a second's notice has more value when you're on the opposite side.
One last pick for the Dragons before we jump into the second wave of bans. Currently being covered is Discordia. If I'm not mistaken, we did see Pegon play this previously in their match up against the Bolts in that very first game. And it was able to find themselves a win there. He went 2-0-4 during that one. So not an uncommon look, at least for Pegon. But is that some pressure in that lane, or even with some of the buffs that Discordia got? Does it still feel like she kind of gears herself more towards that mid-late game?
She's not low pressure early. You're going to need some slight help, so maybe we'll see the Nemesis a bit more often in the mid lane rather than solo. But what Discordia does bring is that passive. Discordia passive is just so incredibly strong. Whoever on your team has top damage now just benefits from additional power early on. So if you get a high pressure soul laner, Discordia is essentially helping out in the soul lane just by existing on the map. I like this pick in general. It does tend to lean a bit more so towards that mid game. You want 1 or 2 items before you're really able to consistently clear those waves, before your damage output is enough to really be concerned about as a Leviathan. But interesting matchup is Soul, for the most part, should be able to immune that second burst of the Golden Apple, Disapparate, timing pretty consistently able to just avoid that burst of damage. So I am curious where this Discordia is going to be allocating those ultimates in these team fights. She is very strong, Discordia that is, at just dealing with the front line, which does fit well with this Jade Dragons composition. I am curious about how the rest of it's going to round out, though.
Well, as the bans come through, it will be Ravana, Shen for the Jade Dragons, Bellona Cabrakan for the Leviathans. Notably, maybe if we want to talk about some pressure, one guy that comes to mind if you want to talk about soul lane with Bellona banned away, maybe King Arthur if you want to go towards a standard warrior for the Jade Dragon, something that fineokay is no stranger to in that lane. And that still leave PandaCat's pick open for last, and with only one hunter banned with Ullr, I mean, the pick of the litter is out there. PandaCat has so many options that he could go towards.
Yeah, maybe you're worried about, oh, what does this mean for us? Is it going to be another Ratatasker duo lane? I was going to say maybe you just like take the Medusa for yourself. With Chernobog taken by the Leviathans, I suppose you don't need to concern yourself with taking a hunter selection just yet. You're not going to have anything limited to you in the next couple of picks. But this Ratatasker has interesting pressure, has the ability to get that Discordia passive very early on. A global presence, should be able to get involved in that mid 3v3. Ratatasker, of course, could also just be the jungle selection. You could have Nemesis flex over towards that soul lane. We've seen that once or twice throughout the last year or so. This draft from the Jade Dragons, now with Ratatasker and Nemesis, very, very high execution in the team fight. You don't have the most consistent AoE CC. It's really up to Khepri to get these fights started. Ratatasker, for the most part, going to be diving into that back line and trying to slow down Soul and Chernobog's damage output. I don't know what I would exactly want in this 5th pick from the Jade Dragons. Just something to shore up that initiation, I think, could go a really long way.
And it really does just beg that question. Is this going to be Ratatasker for fineokay to play in the soul lane, or is it going to be Ratatasker for fineokay to play in the duo lane and throw Pegon somewhere else? But with Ullr already banned, that kind of throws that option out for the solo lane potential for the Dragons that they've done in the past. What we can look at least is the Fafnir Susano that's been locked in by the Leviathan. So Susano into the jungle over for Panitom, no stranger to that pick. Fafnir for Ronngyu. We've been seeing a lot of the Fafnir bans. And to round out the draft for the Jade Dragons, Cupid once again for PandaCat.
Well, there's your AoE CC. There's your initiation. Fields of Love will make it a little bit easier. Again, there are good answers from the Leviathans. Fafnir probably never going to get hit by Fields of Love as long as he's got that Draconic transformation available. Soul Disapparate going to get you out of there pretty easily as well. You're forcing Chernobog ult in the laning phase pretty consistently. He's just going to go up into the air, land back down to avoid Fields of Love, which has value, just being able to limit some of that global presence. Very strong for the Jade Dragons ADC. But this is a very different style of composition to what we just saw. Whereas in Game 1, the Jade Dragons were, hey, let's get to that 5-on-5 engagement. We're just going to dominate because we outscale in the team fight. This time around, I'm thinking I'm probably favoring the Leviathans scaling into the late game. Chernobog and Soul, of course, is phenomenal damage. Artio and Fafnir, very consistent engage. Susano, even to a certain extent with that ultimate, can start off these fights really easily. Just knock up 1 or 2 people, and all of a sudden the rest of your team's already on top of them. I think the Jade Dragons are going to be really reliant on that Ratatasker. I think this composition lives and dies with fineokay on Rat. If he's getting involved early, making the rotations, getting into those 3v3s in mid, and really leveraging that global presence, this can transition the Jade Dragons very easily towards objectives. Auto attack jungle plus a Cupid means that you'll make short work of Pyromancers or Gold Furies. But it is high execution, and up against the reigning world champions, it's already pretty tough to play.
It's going to be tough, especially maybe talking about the laning phase. You know, Ratatasker versus Artio, the Assassin versus the Guardian, kind of two opposite sides of that spectrum. I mean, how does that laning phase even go for fineokay? Is he going to need some of that extra help from Sam to kind of be able to push himself through this early game?
Once he gets thick bark, you're all right? Like, once you've got the sustain and lane to match up against what Artio is able to do, PvE healing with that third ability on the wave, in combat healing with the surge ability in Druid stance, really does make it hard for Ratatasker before he's got self-sustain himself. But we've seen fineokay go towards like Soul Eater plus thick bark. Once he gets to that point, he'll be just fine, and he'll be able to rotate through the jungle and probably pretty consistently steal away some of these buffs. Until then, maybe we'll see a bit of Sam for Soccer over there.
And then maybe for Panitom over on the Susano, any particular lane that kind of catches your eye that some higher pressure would be a little bit easier for him, maybe go over and try and deal with fineokay in the early game until he gets that acorn, or maybe you think he tries to sit on this Discordia kind of early on?
Discordia and Cupid are both pretty easy to lock down for Susano. Discordia leaps away, even inside that little tiny circle of stealth. You could just pull him out. The cone from Susano's too large enough that you really don't need to aim it too much in those scenarios. Otherwise, pretty easy to chase down a Cupid as well, as long as you're able to avoid that Fields of Love.
We'll see if the Leviathans can close this one out and bring us over to a game number 3, or the Jade Dragons going to sweep it away with the 2-0. Let's jump right into game number 2 with Dave and Trelly once more.
Look, the Atlantis Leviathans have not been strangers to building early game leads in their last couple of games. Feels like they've had a lead in every single one of them, but been unable to close out a few of those games. Game 1 against the Jade Dragons, no exception. At points, 5,000-6,000 gold ahead. Zapman 3 levels ahead of PandaCat, unable to close out for the win in game number 1. So the Jade Dragons move us here into game 2. 1 game in hand, PandaCat back on the Cupid, but a totally different look at a composition for the Atlantis Leviathans here, Trelly. Double Hunter, Fafnir, Susano in the jungle. It's going to be a unique look from what we saw in game 1.
Yeah, I imagine the duo lane will be a little bit less aggressive. You have Ronngyu on the Fafnir, which is going to bring some fair bit of CC, but the Soul I don't think has too much follow-up until, you know, you're hitting level 5 or so, and I don't think the auto-attack boxing is going to happen that much often either. It's really just probably a slow burn in that lane specifically up until these junglers want to get active. Obviously, Panitom has the ability to do so, but didn't go for the blink. Opted into the beads, I think, respecting a fair bit of CC on the side of the Jade Dragons. And if you ever did want to gank PandaCat, I mean, you're dealing with Fields of Love. Susano really does not love being in the Fields of Love, no pun intended. So it's going to be a difficult one. I think that's why the beads is forced there, just so he can try and get active and try and force some early aggression here.
And you would think that get the Susano getting the ball rolling, though. Maybe the same with Nem. Little totem of coup battle. I wondered if something may have been brewing just because Sam and Panitom were both kind of heading their way towards the right side, but same build fineokay went for last time we saw this Ratatasker pick, but obviously over in the solo lane. Good sustain early, gets Soul Eater. So we'll see where the junglers end up placing some of their aggression. This Discordia pick, though, over in mid has been on the rise here as of late, Trelly. It's been something really this week we've seen a little bit of. Feels like a very standard mage. You get some good lockdown, you get some good damage in the fight, and of course the passive is always helpful. Something teams have not wanted to pick for a little while, but last couple of sets we've seen a bit more Discordia.
Yeah, I think the small buff was enough to bring her back into favor, but more so just for the passive, as you highlighted. You give it to whoever has top damage, they're able to get some extra DPS in their own lane and usually get some pressure, and then you just play through whoever has it.
PandaCat might have some damage for Ronngyu, but
Horrific.
So yeah, Horrific gets used. A long burn of a fight there if Ronngyu was going to end up going down. Instead, it will just be some damage into the Fafnir. And Zapman able to sit back, farm up nicely on this Soul. I think similar things can be said about the Soul as well. Magical ADCs, for a while it was Freya. Olarun's been very popular. And then Soul has been sprinkled in maybe once or twice. I guess there is some good value in that pick. You get big burst damage with the ultimate and can scale up just fine along the same lines as the other ADCs we've been seeing.
Yeah, Soul just doesn't die quickly ever, right? She has so much survivability with the sap rate. She can stall out her CC immunity for such a long time, and you even get some key CC immunity there while casting Supernova. So you're just very slippery. You still have the big burst damage that you highlighted. And then if you want to build into some auto attack damage, which Zapman surely could, if you wanted to go for, the nimble Bancroft start could be interesting. But it looks like fineokay is going to get a attempted gank, but Panitom actually does go for this.
Wow, the pull kept things interesting, but fineokay with his second tier of Acorn. A little bit more safe over here on the right side. So the desk kind of zoomed out, looked at team fight needs, team fight strengths of both of these teams. Jade Dragons, until having that Cupid, maybe relying on the backline dive of fineokay, and then hopefully, Mike and Pegon with the apple to provide some individual instances of lockdown. With the Cupid lock-in, would you say concerns are eased about team fight potential of this Jade Dragon squad, or do you think still pretty high execution?
It's still pretty high execution for sure, and we saw how much PBM was focused out last game on this Khepri, and he started beads. This time around, he started that horrific emblem, so I don't think it's going to be as easy to frontline as Khepri, because, fineokay would love to frontline as well, and he will, but when he goes up into the sky, there's no tank there. There's no one sitting around taking up damage or chasing everyone out, so Mike will be the solo tank for at least a couple seconds during that. And he can get CC down pretty easily, so I imagine at level 12, might want to put some stock into the beads, or maybe just say, you know what, I'm going to get shelled anyways, and hopefully I'll just be tanky enough to survive these fights. There's just a fair bit of lockdown. You got double Guardian and Ronngyu Jarcorrr, and then a Typhoon from Panitom is always going to be a problem. Yeah, you just always have to watch how you're positioning. Obviously, Mike was focused out a fair bit, but they ended up winning anyways, so maybe he's like, you know what, I got beads last time.
Yep.
It didn't help me survive anyways. I was still focused out. I'm just going to get the horrific. Late game is going to slow their DPS. If I get focused out, you guys will be able to prosper for it.
Yep. Yeah, I like the game of chess sometimes supports have to play with relics and early relic choices. Sprint for Fields of Love, Horrific Emblem for reasons you've listed there. And Mike and PandaCat, luckily this time, able to safely reach level 5 on their respective characters. Same duo lane as game 1 for the Jade Dragons. And remember, by this point, PandaCat, I don't think it died yet. It was Mike who got caught out around this time in game 1. And then it was just an onslaught on Panda after he had his beads burnt. And so avoiding that, Panda, look, you could tell there was frustration there for the Jade Dragons, especially their dual lane at the start of that game. Get relentlessly ganked. There's not much PandaCat can really do aside from not leave his tier 2 tower at points in that lane. So avoiding that really would be a better start for the Jade Dragons here this game. Zapman into the Bancrofts. You expect it. A couple of the glyph options. Nimble's been the option 99% of the time. I don't think we've seen the claw yet, but with those glyphs and the magical ADCs being the way they are, that's opened up some of the build paths, Trelly, instead of feeling like you have to rush the builds, or the rings rather in the build. Bancrofts, Typhons, things like that. A bit more popular early in some of these magical ADC builds.
Yeah, and it just gives so much extra survivability as well. Zapman's going to have incredible sustain when his heat's stacked up, and once again, this time Jarcorrr is going to be in trouble. Gets the ult down and drops the cripple foot. He can't dash away. He just has to sit here and fight.
Yeah, Yark's sticking around, but Sheento ults over from mid. It's a dunk in from fineokay. The pullback from Panitom delays first blood, but fineokay gets first blood nonetheless. Now Panitom, after answering back the first kill, hoping to reinitiate. Mike has Scarab's Blessing. Nice root in the back line from Pegon, who still has some damage. Scarab's Blessing gets used by Mike. Is that a bait, though? Is that trying to get the Leviathans to walk forward? It did for a second. But both solo laners, the only casualties of this right side fight.
Yeah, fineokay gets credit for the first blood, but the Leviathans already were a fair bit up in gold. Might get stunned out again by Ronngyu, but not going to have enough damage as Panitom was invading the blue buff. So much aggression coming from both sides, but the Leviathans did actually get that blue buff and the revenge kill there. So at the very least, we're seeing the gold lead in favor of the Leviathans, and that, I assume, will just continue as is, about 400. It's nothing massive. You know, the first blood gold still did go over to fineokay, who's level 9, so it really just depends on how active this Ratatosker can get, where he can show this global presence and try to be as annoying as possible. We saw he attempted to look at those back camps and then decide, you know what, I'm going to go back to lane. I don't want to miss that farm. He doesn't have a blue buff either, so it's going to get real annoying trying to sit through this lane. But once he gets that soul leader, he should be able to back up, teleport back in, and have no issues. Jarcorrr did start the Divine Ruin. You know, he saw how much healing is going to be coming through from this Ratatosker. No, that's without the Soul Eater as is. So once that comes through, he's just like, you know what, I'm never going to be able to trade in this lane effectively without some anti-heal. I'm going to force that out and hopefully have some extra presence there. But it did make him a little bit less tanky, and I think that's why he was able to fall there with that rattle. But fineokay traded as well, so it wasn't terrible.
No, fineokay finishes up Thick Bark. He'll be safer in that lane. Again, going into the Soul Eater. So forcing the itemization from Yark. At least a small win for fineokay, but Artio's never going to hate a Divine Ruin. More damage is always a nice thing, in my opinion. Sheento going Transcendence, so he'll stack up against Warlock Staff still for Pegon. And that's been an item, Warlock specifically, seemingly regardless of the mid laner that we're seeing. Sands of Time into Warlock, sometimes even foregoing Sands of Time straight into like Book of Thoth and then Warlocks. Sort of as Trelly bridged over all of the characters we've been seeing in mid. Feels like Warlock Staff, first item, stacking item, for a little while now has just been the option. Panitom, eyes for Pegon, comes up just short on this gank.
Yeah, it's always going to be good if you're trying to play for the late game. If you know that you're not going to get active too early on, you can just sit back, collect your stacks, you'll get a little bit more survivability, a little bit extra tank stats, and then some percentage damage later on in the game. So I think it's always going to be safe, and you can force it whenever you need to. But on some characters, you know, like the Morrigan, for example, you're not going to sit there in lane stacking that up. You want to get active with your ult whenever you can. It really just depends on the matchup you're in. And I think Pegon realizes that he's up against a Chernobog, who is going to just be able to dash into the wall and immune most of his damage whenever it comes through. Probably just stack up and not try to get too aggressive. I do think that the Jade Dragons have a lot to deal with Ronngyu when he does go into this Draconic transformation. We already touched on, I think on the desk, Mifflin was talking about, that you can use the Fields of Love to try and force that dragon out, or you wait for the dragon to come through and use it after the fact, and then he just can't leap away. You can throw the apple on as well. There's a lot of cripples here for the Jade Dragons that they could just shred through Ronngyu as the game continues. But Panitom was looking towards the solo lane, but fineokay is just too slippery. He's level 11, about to get access to that second relic. You're 2 levels down as is, so Panitom would love a kill opportunity. It's just not going to happen. I don't think fineokay is going to give him one anytime soon.
Yeah, 1 level for Fino, 1 level for SMITE, maybe half a level as Panitom with some farm has been able to catch up. So difficult to kill off a Ratatosker, as we mentioned, and really Miff set it up. Once you get Thick Bark, you're not all that worried. Between the ultimate, the dash, should be fine to stay alive, and you have a stun if you need it. So for initiation or escape, Ratatosker in a relatively good spot. Pyromancer spawns out. It's right around this time in these games where teams considering Pyro. But the way the Leviathans and the Dragons have played, I don't know if we're going to get many objectives just sort of snuck away. Panitom walking towards the left, but again, I think PandaCat has learned a bit from game number 1, and good ward coverage, drops a ward over, not only on Gold Fury, but the entrance behind Gold Fury. Because it's one thing, you know, to not let a soul stay equal, but you definitely don't want this soul getting ahead if you can help it. And maybe a bit of an XP lead for Zapman. It's all they have to show for it so far on left.
Yeah, it looked like Panitom was going to camp out at that purple buff, but missed the timer by a few seconds and had to back away. I was going to say possible Pyromancer opportunity. It looks like SMITE is going to go for the pull here, but Jarcorrr sniffs this out pretty much immediately. And it looks like it was juggled back and forth. PBM went to tank, but in comes Sheento ulting it, and now they're going to try and take this one for themselves.
Pyromancer pulled, dropped, pulled again by the Jade Dragons. Apple gets used. Jarcorrr is going to get locked down in range. Big healing numbers, though, from the Artio. Keep that health bar a bit higher up than it was. Pyromancer for the Jade Dragons. And no fight after the fact. It was a disengage call from the Dragons after the Pyromancer was secured.
I'm so conditioned to see whenever a Chernobog flies in that, oh, this is going to be an unmatched fight, but Sheento's already in mid, so that was just his quickest route into getting that objective. It seemed like they wanted to try and go for the reverse pull, but too quick. fineokay rotates in. He gets the ult onto Sheento. They're going to try to get aggressive here.
It's a good double dunk from fineokay, but the damage has not followed just yet. Sheento low and through the Aegis. Sanford picks up the kill. Fields of Love down, and it pops. And Panitom pops with it. Ronngyu now jumping out, and a Strife connects. All of it hitting this individual CC. Has just hit its mark in a sweeping fight for the Jade Dragons. And wouldn't you guess it, a Gold Fury just behind the fight.
Yeah, fineokay was thinking about backing there, but decided to stick around just in case Zapman showed some face. Supernova's not available, and Stellar Burst does not have the best confirmation onto this Gold Fury, so I'd rather would go over to that lane and just try and farm up. So pretty big swing in favor of the Jade Dragons. It was first blood for fineokay. Immediately after, the kill goes down, and you know the Leviathans had a small lead. But since then, some great aggression on the side of the Jade Dragons, and there's a good knowing of space for fineokay to come over and say, hey, I can defend that red buff. I can teleport in and then just use my global presence to help you guys out. To get the kill, and they get the Gold Fury after the fact, before the Pyromancer as well. So there's a lot of swings going in their favor. Now I imagine probably on the brakes for a bit. You know, the Leviathans have some power spikes they would love to get, some second relics coming through where the Jade Dragons already have those spikes. So don't think any more aggression should be coming in until Pyromancer spawns in once again. There's no towers that are looking too weak. No lane is overwhelmingly ahead, so probably a little slow on the fighting for the time being.
You would think. As Sam goes Exy and immediately into the heavy executioner. So starter, or glyph rather, as fineokay gets ganked, dunks back down, and that shows you how slippery this Ratatoskr is. You're unconcerned in a 3v1. You can dunk in and then just dash away. The Leviathans won't be able to say much about it. Already, the Glad Shield now at a very strong point for Fino. Sanford is as well. Nice fight there for the Nemesis. Picks up a 2-level lead over Panitom on the other side of the jungle.
Yeah, Panitom's just going to have so much struggles as the game goes on. Even with the beads in that last fight was essentially one-shot by PandaCat. The Heart Bomb and the Fields of Love hit at the exact same time. And you know, you're just not able to run out if that ability is placed properly. And as long as fineokay and Sam are fighting together, which more than often they are, the protection shred is going to be paying off so well. And then late game, of course, PandaCat will also get benefits from that. So the heavy execution, I think, a solid pickup there for Sam. We don't usually see it this early on, but yeah, when you want to get active against the tanks in the early, this is what you got to do. And fineokay's been trading this effectively. He's been having some solid presence, so I see why Sam was like, let's just force this. And I'm going to go over to solo lane. I'm going to help you out whenever I need to, and we can look to fight, you know, whenever we can. Notably, last game, about this time, PandaCat was considerably far behind, and Zapman was like 3 levels up. So being net even, I think more so what the Leviathans are used to in that lane. So maybe that'll help them out more. I'm not sure at this point, you know. We were joking that I possibly cursed them by saying, like, Zapman's not used to being up this far.
Yeah, I think that's your fault.
Yeah, I think that, you know, you guys can blame me, all the Leviathans fans out there. I did curse them saying that Zapman's not used to playing with a lead, but now this is more so what he's in
That's right, he's right at home. So he's even in lane, chilling out, farming up. It's right where Zap wants to be. Maybe right where fineokay wants to be. Dunks down onto Jarcorrr. Plenty of damage from the Jade Dragons and the Artio, who goes Divine Ruin first. Unable to survive, but Panitom's got damage as well, and the full volley of it turns around to kill on a Sanford. Beads get used, Strife, dodge. Panitom had to play it perfectly, and he is able to do so. 1-for-1 trade over on right. Jarcorrr down for Sam.
Yeah, Panitom with the juke shoes did have to use the beads there. Was a little bit worried about the disruption of the golden apple, but it looks like tier 1 tower will be looked at in the meantime. So Leviathans get a trade there, Yark for Sam. And they are going to lose a little bit more gold in the process. It could have been worse, though. Panitom definitely could have fallen there if he didn't have the hot steps there for Pegon, who has just a ton of damage built already. I mean, Sheento's building into that fail knot. Once that item comes through, you'd think he's about matched with the build presence of Pegon, but Warlock's Divine and Soul Reaver, no one's really tanky enough to deal with the damage that's coming out of the Discordia at the moment. So whenever you see Pegon join these fights, you always got to be worried. Notably, Pyromancer finally is spawning back in. The Jade Dragons got it pretty much on spawn, at least a couple minutes after the fact. So I've been sort of waiting for that to see who would be in the lead by the time this comes through. And Zapman just with Supernova, but that's because Panitom's wrapping around the back.
PandaCat drops Fields of Love, and PandaCat's got damage. This is a 2 versus 1, and PandaCat nearly got the 1 kill. Zapman empty-handed on damage from his ultimate, but now Ronngyu is here as well, but this is a bait from PandaCat. Sprint popped, and Zapman dropped on, but Sheento over from mid lane. PandaCat relentlessly being jumped at by the Leviathans, but the Leviathans have not been able to find the kill. In fact, PandaCat supplying plenty of damage. Panitom goes back, sustains up just a bit, now back into lane, double pull in, but now the dash out. The odd number Jade Dragons at every turn out trading the Leviathans.
Yeah, but it looks like SamForSoccer is still over in solo getting some free farm, so I don't imagine the Oni Fear will be pulled right away. The Jade Dragons have a fair bit of pressure here, but it looks like the Leviathans sniffed that out and sent out the Trebuchet just in case to try and stall them. They didn't want to get any chance at losing this Oni Fury as it spawns in, and Jarcorrr makes the rotation as well. He's full HP, so I think that will scare off the Jade Dragons for the time being. They don't have overwhelming burst to try and confirm this. Anytime a Typhoon is on the table, that's going to be some disruption you don't want to deal with, but PBM is setting up for a possible gank here, just pulling the first person that steps in, and now that Sam's made the rotation over, the Oni Fury is being pulled.
Chin size for PandaCat means that, yes, Jarcorrr full HP. That's going to change quickly if the Artio walks forward, and an Oni Fury quietly to the Jade Dragons because the Leviathans are on the other side of the map. Taking the Pyromancer will get confirmed before fineokay is able to really attempt the steal. But still potentially a fight on the other end of it. fineokay does so much damage. Soul Eater doing the absolute most amount of work here. Jarcorrr hoping to get out alive. Look for the range from Fino and Pegon, but Jarcorrr will live, Sheento will not, and the Jade Dragons
Sam
dismantling the Leviathans. Backs get canceled. Slows won't be enough. It'll be a tier 2 tower for the Jade Dragons, plus a kill onto Sheento.
Yeah, Panitom going that Wingblade third item, did slow his DPS a fair bit, but there's a lot of slows on the side of the Jade Dragons that he's getting a lot of value out of. Maybe is in some trouble there if SamForSoccer hits that slow, but he just is able to zoom on out. But it looks like the Jade Dragons, they sniffed at that Pyromancer, and now fineokay is going to tank up his Fire Giant. I was curious if they go for it. Panitom knows, Jarcorrr knows, they're on the way. I don't think they have this. They have to get off immediately.
Yeah, PandaCat was rotating in, but the damage wasn't immediately there for the Jade Dragons. You got a nice lead built up here in the first 19.5 minutes. You don't want to risk that on what would have been an aggressive Fire Giant call. But now that you've got everyone here immediately, you can consider it. The Leviathans may get baited in. Jarcorr's got to dodge the Fields of Love, but that means walking back towards the Jade Dragons. Beads used by the Artio. There's a root then waiting on the other end. How about a dunk into a strife into all of it from the Jade Dragons, but still kills have not dropped. Sheento sends the Typhoon right down Main Street, and the Scarab's Blessing keeps PandaCat on the map. But now Mike doesn't have his defensive utility, so he has got to walk out of the back line of this fight. fineokay sustaining up. Sam has gone back in as PandaCat's got a double. He'll walk forward. He'll have auto attacks. PandaCat grabs a triple. One more auto attack gets him the quad, but it won't be there. And the Jade Dragons, they step up, and PandaCat does it again.
So many multi-kills for Panda this set, and he didn't even back up at this point. He's going to sustain himself with hearts, possibly pull this Fire Giant on his own because he's got the time, but Zapman sticks around just in case to make sure it doesn't go through. The Jade Dragons are able to back up, get a full reset here, and they should be able to pull this Fire Giant for absolute free. Zap's ult's down. I don't imagine he sticks around much longer. And just in case, PandaCat's going to play the Sentinel duty and just check it out. Zap might actually go for the Miracle Steal here. I mean, match is on the line. You're down 2-9. You already lost game 1. What do you got to lose at this point? Apparently everything, and he's going to go for the back camps instead.
Yeah, I'll take the back camps. Level 19 on the Soul. Doesn't have ultimate to try to steal it away just yet. Maybe shortly was coming back. Does not matter. The Jade Dragons get fire just over 20 minutes into the game, have themselves a 6,000 gold lead. And yes, Panda makes the headlines there, gets the triple kill, turns around game 1 in similar fashion. But I think similar to game 1, the initiation of the Jade Dragons was about as good as it gets in that last fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And a beautiful Scarab's Blessing, perfectly timed with the Typhoon to make sure that there's no casualties in that fight. So PBM playing out of his mind as per usual. And fineokay, I don't think there's an S key on his keyboard. Like, he is just constantly going in. It doesn't matter if there's 3, 4 members there. Panitom has to ult immediately. The knockup should be able to get him out of harm's way, but Mike forces that one out. No relics get used because there was no relics to use. Panitom probably was a little bit worried about that one. It looks like Mike is still stopping back, just trying to be as annoying as possible. But now it's time for base defense. You still have some high points here to your draft. Of course, Sheento's got a fair bit of damage coming through. Zapman ticks over to level 20, and notably, Ronngyu did finish that Emp armor, so your Phoenix will be firing on all cylinders. The main issue, however, is that Panitom is only level 16. Because he went for that Wing Blade, doesn't have as much damage as the opposition. He's just not a threat at the moment. The Susano is essentially just a CC bot.
Right, feels that way. Typhoon was great, but didn't turn around to kill because Scarab's Blessing is obnoxious. The Jade Dragons did not let what happened in game 1 happen again here in game number 2. Took control very early on and it basically run things. Being able to find a couple of opening kills. fineokay has looked right at home on this Ratatosker. Mike's got to be careful here. He's low on the back line of this fight. As poke damage from Pegon makes a big difference here. You've got time if you're the Dragons to sustain back up just a bit. Look at Mike's health bar. Rising ever so steadily. fineokay is not dropping that quickly on the other side. Fields of Love, that means go. And so does the Ratatosker ultimate. So does the retribution from Sanford. Where will fineokay go? Out is the answer. Left side Phoenix down.
Yeah, it looks like that was just the bait to make sure that the rest of the Leviathans were backing off. Jade Dragons get a solid initiation there, and most of the damage that went the way of PBM was just from Emperor's armor, right? That was just the Phoenix absolutely shredding him. So Mike is tanking up once again. Is going to have to be aware of that, as Zapman is actually doing a ton of damage.
Jarcorrr did find the front line of this fight. Sam needs the shell and the shield to stay alive. Typhoon though from Panitom. What a play. It's calculated in a perfect strike from Pegon on the back end. Maybe just delays this out. Just what the Leviathans needed, because that is likely the end of this Fire Giant siege. 45 seconds on Sanford. It'll be very close to the time the buff wears out. The Jade Dragons will have to reset.
That was just a beautifully timed Typhoon there by Panitom. There was the shield on top of the shell. Both of them petered out at about the same time. And that's when Panitom sent it through. He couldn't have held it for much longer, but he was just able to make sure to not use it for the knock-up, use it for the confirmed damage onto Sanford, and at least one return kill, as Leviathans only lose that left side bird. And I do think that this Emperor's armor was extremely intimidating for the Dragons. No one really wanted to tank up that Phoenix. They didn't quite have the minion wave. A decent bit of wave clear was coming through, and Zap hits a big supernova. Didn't do too much damage, but it forced out PandaCat's Aegis. You can't get any Phoenix damage. You can't auto-attack when that Aegis is channeled, so it stopped a ton of the DPS for the Jade Dragon. So all things considered, given the gold lead, could have been a much worse defense there, as fineokay finds Panitom and solos him out.
My goodness. Now, how impactful is it? Fire Giant's going to be up in a minute. Panitom will be back about 5 seconds before the Fire Giant respawns. So there's an opportunity for an immediate Fire Giant pull from the Jade Dragons. You'll have a 5v4 in a moment like that, but
they want the Phoenix.
Yeah, do you really need the Fire Giant if you've got a 5? Maybe this is worth as much as a Fire Giant could be. And a Phoenix Siege suddenly for the Jade Dragons as a pick onto Panitom totally changes the dynamic of this game. Another strike from Pegon and another great Fields of Love from PandaCat on the back of the fight. Forces Jarcorrr into an awkward spot. And the Jade Dragons simply walk forward, drop their ult, and drop the Phoenix.
I mean, that is just such a massive pick on the Panitom because, you know, the Leviathans get that defense. I think that went quite well for them because they have Sheento, they have Chernobog, who could have defended the fire minions just fine and then still helped out with the Fire Giant defense later on. Once Panitom goes down, you're in a position where, okay, if Sheento's defending, then we only have 3 members. Ronngyu is going to get pulled in. It looks like the chase down will ensue. He's going to have to ult here.
Oh, no, but he
doesn't want to use it.
Man, okay, look. The odds of this game for the Leviathans were pretty small anyway. But the individual team members getting picked prior to a Fire Giant, prior to a Phoenix, anything like that, is not helping the cause at all.
Definitely not.
I mean, if there was any world where the Leviathans were going to step up, which again, I'm not sure there was, it's now effectively 0. But fineokay can just continue his onslaught. He will drop onto the head of Zapman but 3 members of the Leviathans looking towards the Ratatosker. But wouldn't you guess it, hard to kill off a rat, especially when a Scarab's Blessing is waiting around the corner. With the Fire Giant, little sustain. He'll keep himself nice and topped up, but he's stuck around. Now he's got beads off of Sheento. Has been relentless. It has been non-stop from the Jade Dragons, and the fight may just happen outside of the base of the Leviathans. They may not make it back to their Titan to defend this game. And suddenly you're mid, your jungle, they are dead for a minute, and the Jade Dragons have a 5v3.
I mean, what a split up fight there. It looks like the left side bird goes down. PandaCat's dashing in at this point because he has absolutely no fear. Maybe having a little bit is Zapman, who has to use the Supernova and is gonna have some trouble getting back to base.
Man, it is unbelievable from the Jade Dragons what they've done here in game 2 after a contested back and forth game number 1. Jade Dragons took the bull by the horns in game 2, and they will close out this set in convincing 2-0 fashion.
And it looks like just playing with their food a little bit longer. So the Discordia passive diff, fineokay was able to run through this whole game on this Ratatosker.
Wow.
He had top damage for quite some time. The extra damage also helped him out. Not to mention PandaCat popping off in those team fights. Mike not letting a single member of his team die whenever he had the chance to be in range for those Scarab's Blessings. So they just had a very solid team draft, and they executed it perfectly.
3 kills for the Leviathans. All 3 of them on Panitom. Panitom had the only 3 kills that the Leviathans had there that game. The Jade Dragons blanked everyone else. And a couple of those were like Typhoon kills on the back end. Like you send a Typhoon in when one low health target is escaping. Like not really through the course of team fights. And the Death set it up, Trelly. It was high execution composition. And the Jade Dragons, regardless of where they are in the standings, a team that can execute those types of comps.
Yeah, I think they knew exactly what they needed to do, and it was a little bit iffy where you are going to be able to get ahead on this Ratatosker.
Right.
If you have the Discordia passive, sure. Are you going to be able to hit all of these ultimates? Can you burn through these tanky targets? If you got Nemesis with Heavy Executioner, sure. They did everything they needed to. They survived long enough, and they just did it so well.
Look, it was relentless. It was a Strife. It was a Rude. It was a Heart Bomb. It was a Fields of Love. It was just any frontliner that stepped forward is getting burnt down. And the Jade Dragons, they bounce back in exactly the way that they need. 2-0 over the Atlantis Leviathans. That's it for Trelly and I. We'll go back to the desk to break this one down.
So now both times that these teams have faced off in phase number 2, it's been the Jade Dragons to come out on top. First a 2-1 in the first half of the phase, and now a 2-0 over the Atlantis Leviathans here in game number 2 of this set. And a pretty convincing one, to say the least. I mean, like Dave was saying, game number 1, very back and forth the entire time through until the Dragons were able to finally cut through at least the defenses of the Leviathans. And in this game, though, pretty early on, able to find some decent control. fineokay, even some rotations from Pegon early on, put a lot of pressure in that soul lane and made it very difficult for the Leviathans to keep up.
A tale as old as time for this team, man. If you fall behind against the Jade Dragons as significantly as the Leviathans did here in Game 2, you're not beating the Jade Dragons. Sorry to break it to you. These guys so good at pushing a lead when they're able to establish it for themselves, but I think that this one is also compositional, right? Like, we brought up how high execution this draft is. It is a very difficult composition to play, but once you establish your lead, the game's simplified for the Jade Dragons. I think Dave alluded to it very well towards the end there. Front line of the Leviathans be damned, because they just were not tanky. You step up against an abduct from PBM immediately into Sanford Soccer, shredding upwards of 60% of your defense immediately. It doesn't really matter how many defense items you would purchase, because you're just going to die to that. That's exactly how the Jade Dragons executed some of these late game team fights. For the most part, PandaCat as well, just allowed to free cast in these engagements. The entire time the Leviathans were really just only allowed to fight the people in front of them, and unfortunately for them, the people in front of them were fineokay and Sanford Soccer and PBM, and PBM got to hold on to that ultimate just to make sure that fineokay or Sanford Soccer were making their way out of there alive more often than not. So clean play from the Jade Dragons, executing very well in this composition and really sticking it to the Leviathans in 2.
5-1 for fineokay, a 5-2 for Sam, and a 4-0 for PandaCat. Pegon and PBM, unfortunately not getting any kills for themselves out there, so if you got any of them on your fantasy team, at least for kill-wise, it's not going to be too bad, but going Undying is definitely going to help out. Some nice assists to their name. fineokay coming out with, I think it's at 36,000 damage, good lord, on this Ratatosker, and maybe that's testament to those first few items that he built in there, the Thick Bark Acorn, to keep himself a little bit tankier in that lane, but then Soul Leader into Glad Shield right after. meant that he just had a lot of damage to his name, and he put those 2 items to good use throughout the entirety of this game.
He did. Just an early lead for fineokay in that lane. I was worried about his ability to make it to the portion of the match where he's just going to be able to kind of free farm in the solo. Really needed that thick bark, really needed that soul eater, but it came very quickly. Totem Aku control went his way, and even ticks over to level 5 first, which helped him out a whole lot up against Jarcorrr. Got to give props to every individual member of the Jade Dragons. Not a single lane lost out. Jungle presence was there. Everything was just working.
Yeah, all the gears were turning for the Jade Dragons, and one of the gears in that group is Sanford, the jungler for the Jade Dragons, staying by for the post-game interview with me. Congratulations on your 2-0 over Leviathans. I mean, This is the second time you got a net to face off against them. You went 2-1 against them last time, a clean 2-0 today. I mean, how's it feel for your team to get a 2-0 on such a tough opponent?
It definitely feels good. You know, there's a lot of really good teams, and we've been struggling a bit to get some victories, you know, so it feels good to get the win. Shows like some improvement for sure, so yeah.
Yeah, and for your team out there, you know, finding that win, very important for you guys as you start pushing into the remainder of the phase, start looking over towards Masters. Now that you got your first couple of sets under the belt, at least for this new kind of patch out here at this midseason, anything really feel any kind of different for you guys, or just feel like, you know, just a slight improvement and upward trends for you guys?
There's nothing too different because, like, there's been some, like the bobble's not really in play right now and stuff. So at the moment, it's like it's pretty similar. I think in general, just kind of us improving a bit by bit. I mean, we still have a long way to go, still making a lot of mistakes and stuff, but yeah.
Do you think that when that bobble does come back in play, I think that's a good point to bring up, is we haven't gotten to see one of the talk of the towns out there. Do you think when that bobble comes in, that's going to really start to shake a couple of things up?
I don't know if it'll necessarily change that many picks or whatever, but I think it'll get picked up a lot, especially in like support and probably solo too. It's a pretty good like tank item for like spamming cooldowns and stuff. So yeah, I think it'll get a good amount of play, but yeah, I don't know how much it'll change picks and stuff like that.
Very fair on there. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming by for the post-game interview. Congrats on your 2-0 win in this set. And I'll let you get back to Team Celebrate.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
So kind of echoing a lot of what we were talking with Panitom, not a whole lot of things have changed meta-wise, but I think bringing up the bobble, something that obviously we haven't really got to talk about. We've only ever gotten to see the tier 2 of it up there, because not allowed to have that full one out there just yet. So maybe once we get to see that bobble come in for a preview or for later weeks of play, maybe see a little bit of change-ups as far as some of the builds are concerned. But regardless, a strong win for the Jade Dragons, a 2-0 over the Atlantis Leviathans, and that's just our first set of the day. We've got 2 more coming at you. We'll go ahead and take a look at the schedule. As you can see, it's the Camelot Kings and the Solar Scarabs coming up next. And then to close out our day, the Olympus Bolts and the Valhalla Valkyries to face off.
Some pretty lopsided matchups, I'm thinking, right? Top versus the bottom in both regards, just about. Camelot Kings up with the Solar Scarabs, probably the more interesting of these 2 matchups. I'm really excited to see this Solar Scarab squad coming off the back of a win, right? Having a bit of a better time with their first 2-0 of the year so far, so I'm sure they're riding high. And certainly a team that is always playing up to the level of their opposition. Whether or not they can reach all the way straight to the 8 or 9-1 rather top, yet to be seen.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a stretch. If I remember correctly, the last time these 2 teams squared off, Camelot Kings kind of just beat them down. It wasn't particularly a close match.
That's all the Kings matchups, man.
I mean, that's fair, but
Except
I mean,
for that one.
Yeah, true. Except the one time they had to face the Leviathans, and the Leviathans were able to return the favor. But should be an interesting matchup between the Camelot Kings and the Solar Scarabs up next. And then remember, as I said, still going to have the Bolts and the Valkyries to close out our weekend, our triple header Sunday. So make sure that you stick around, because we're not done just yet. Camelot Kings and Solar Scarabs coming up next.
My weapon of choice in the zombie apocalypse. I know most people would say a gun, but based off like zombie films and all that stuff, it obviously attracts them a lot. So I'd say probably like a bow. It's probably my best option, and plus you can recycle the arrows as well if you need to.
A weapon, a sniper.
You know those big like mallets where it's a circle with a bunch of spikes on it? I don't know, one of those. Yeah, a mace. I want a mace, you know, it just sounds cool.
For zombie apocalypse, I gotta be using like some long katana type weapon, you know, it has a long blade, it can keep the range from the zombies, and it's useful.
That's a tough one.
Well, what type of weapon we're talking about here? Just any gun, I guess. But guns will just run out of ammo, so you'll just be doomed eventually.
I have no idea, man. I'm just gonna go with a knife, man. I can do anything with a knife, I don't know.